Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. Hey, gatekeepers. What's going on? How you doing? I'm still reeling from our show last night. We had such a great time doing Liberty with Lynn Monet, a wonderful author, medium, experiencer, so many wonderful things she is. And of course, all the decades in the medical field that she did. And we just loved Lynn. And I made sure I let her know all the wonderful things you guys were saying to her in chat and everything. So there's that. Thank you for being there last night. Echo Leaf, you said you watched it halfway through the Liberty. Isn't it good? It kind of harkens back to when the History Channel used to tell history. You know what I mean? So that was a blast last night. But you know, we love to get into the mystery and a little bit. You know, we reach into the darkness every once in a while, and we just get a whole big old handful of it. And I'm just going to jump to the chase here. I've got two wonderful people here. I guarantee you I will have a southern drawl by the time this show is over, and there's nothing I can do about it. I spent way too much time in Alabama for it not to come back. So please forgive me for that. But I absolutely love South America, all of the Southern America. Let's put it that way. I love the people. I love the fact that when you're driving to work, people are waving to you. You know, I waved to a guy for 15 years, had no idea who he was, but every morning I went to work, there he was on the porch waving at me. You always felt welcome. You always felt noticed and heard, and it just, everything slows down just enough to where you can take in nature. But I'll tell you guys, nature has a dark side, and we all know it. And we all want to know more about it. So I can't think of two more fantastic people to have in here tonight. My first guest, as usual, my co-host for Monday Madness, is a wonderful, you know him well, Mr. Steve Stockton, and he is an author. He is a content creator. He runs wonderful, everything he touches turns to gold. And then he finally met somebody that touched him and turned him into it too. So let's get him in here, Mr. Steve Stockton, my buddy. How you doing tonight, love?
Hey, doing good. With an introduction like that, I wish I had a better show.
You wish you were somebody else, don't you? How you doing, baby?
Doing good. How you doing?
Good. I am so excited for tonight. And I'll tell you what, I'm not gonna. What you got going on? You're good. You have a good day.
Yeah, I had a good day.
I just can't wait to get in here.
Missing persons video, and then I had another one on Tales Untold about feral humans in the woods of southeastern Kentucky, and it's blowing up the charts over there. You have to check it out.
I saw that today, and I said, if that wasn't fortuitous, I mean, because look what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I had no idea we were going to be talking about the land between the lakes or anything tonight.
It's so funny, Steve, when I reach out, when I told you, I said, I'm going to get Elijah on, and, I just, threw it out there, and you've heard of him, and he's kind of sort of heard, he knows you, and you guys are kind of, so let's just get that over with and get y'all together. Because I'm telling you what, Elijah's going to be part of this family. His family's going to be part of this family, because I've been watching him a while. And his dear dad was just one of the most wonderful people to listen to speak on just about any subject, let alone this one. And they started the Cryptid Research Institute, and it like so much of care taken. He's one of us. You know, it's not, we're not going to exploit it for this, whatever. We're just going to tell the truth. And I love it. And he's also got, I've almost forgot the name, Nightmare Nuggets of Cryptid Terror. What could be better? Elijah, if you're ready, give me a thumbs up, darling. Oh, there it is. Come on in here, Mr. Elijah Henderson, everybody. Get in here.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Hello. How are you?
Howdy, folks.
Hello. And Gabrielle. Oh, I didn't know we were going to get. Oh, I'm so thrilled to have you both. This is wonderful.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh gosh, it's wonderful. You know, just make yourself to home, okay? I hope you brought snacks.
We
It's cozy combo.
in.
Here we go. It's cozy convo, and but first and foremost, I want to introduce you guys. This is Steve Stockton. He is a buddy. He is my best bud. And
It's nice
if you
to
guys
meet
haven't talked, I'm telling you what, you need to. So I'm just going to try to get out of the way and just every once in a while, because I think you guys are really going to hit it off. Elijah, tell us a little bit about you and your family. And I want to give you my condolences. I know it's been a bit, but you know what I'm talking about. And my heart hugs your heart, sweetheart. Wonderful.
I appreciate that very much.
Wonderful human being. Really, really. You're blessed.
September will be 3 years.
September will be 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 3 years, and time fills in the cracks to a certain degree. But it's still you don't forget it, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
And I'm so glad we got the videos and everything else. And I guess we feel it, some of us, we feel it sooner because we get in there and we find out things have happened. So many things have happened over the past couple of years, but we're here tonight. So these are my wonderful gatekeepers. You start slinging them some bacon. Here comes the bacon now. Bacon is love. So if you get hit with a pound of bacon, it's love. Just know it. That's coming from my gatekeepers here in this chat. They're wonderful. They're going to throw up your links for your YouTube channel. And do you have a website, Elijah?
not at the moment. My main platform is on YouTube.
Okay. And that give us all that info first. Let's get it all out there so we can just kick back and have a good combo.
It's real easy. It's just Cryptid Studies Institute on YouTube, on Facebook, and YouTube's our main platform we do. So
there you
go. We're easy.
Here comes the bacon. Here comes the links. Okay. Thank you so much, Mod. So welcome in. Welcome in. Now, if you both would like to take, I think first, Steve, let's find out how they got into this. What do you think? And then I'm going to back off and let you guys, because we have stories to share, and I don't know if we're even going to have enough time. We might wake up and it'll be tomorrow. So go ahead. How'd you get in this?
Well, I reckon how we got involved with this. It's a little bit of a long story, but it covers multiple generations of our family, so to speak. I'm not going to name specific names of who they were, because these people who encountered these things, some of them are still alive, and I don't know how they feel about me telling who they were and what they went through. So I'm just going to tell you that my family seen these things. And my family comes from over in East Tennessee, in a little town called Dayton, Tennessee. And that town is famous because it was the site where the Scopes monkey trial happened. And anybody not familiar with that, it is essentially the starting point where evolution started being taught in the schools, and they had a big court trial over it, which ended up being like a creation versus evolution court trial. It was a very big thing at the time, but that town is where that took place.
Hey, that's something. Hey, Steve, who was the famous lawyer that did that? You know that off the top of your head? It's right there, and I can't get it.
Clarence Darrow.
There you go.
William Jennings Bryan.
There you
I
go.
think I've actually got distant relations to both of them.
Wow.
And that town, it's a beautiful town, one of the most beautiful places you'll ever see. And it used to have a lot more nature than it does now. It's still a pretty small town, still got a lot of wildlife, got a lot of nature and whatnot. But back in the 60s, when my family started seeing some stuff, they lived on a farm, and to get to that, it was down like a dirt gravel road, and the trees kind of hung over like that, kind of like just kind of leaned over the path like that. And when the family would be walking home late at night, they'd have something following them up on the ridge, and they couldn't see it, but they could hear it following them. And they could see like little dirt clods rolling down the hill and whatnot. And if they'd start walking, this thing would start walking. If they'd stop moving, it would stop. And if they would start running, it would run after them too. And on one occasion, maybe multiple occasions, it chased them to the house, and they ran into the door, closed the door, and they had to push their stove up against the door to keep this thing from getting in because it didn't have like a deadbolt or anything like that on the
Right,
door.
right.
But they could see this thing was grabbing the door and shaking it back and forth like that. It didn't seem to know, excuse me, how to operate the actual doorknob mechanism, but it was, I assume whatever it was had been watching and could tell
Pulling.
it
Like
was
a raccoon.
how to
Like a
use it.
raccoon does that. You can see them learning through the decades. You really can. They adapt. They adapt and overcome. Let's just put it that way. So it's just a matter of time before they're, using the whatchamacallit, the key in codes and stuff. Just
It
saying.
won't be long before they can start.
Exactly.
They watch long enough. And stuff like this, they kept having weird things on the property, and ended up they were all sitting around one night in the house listening to Loretta Lynn records, and they started hearing this raspy breathing coming from one of the windows, and they all looked over and they seen this thing looking in the window at them, and the family member who told me a little bit more details about this, I think that they said that it was about 7 or 8 feet off the ground where this thing would have been, and it had red glowing eyes. They could see its eyes glowing, and it had a wide nose like an old man, but it had a monkeyish face to it. And this thing was looking in, and this is the deep south. This is over in East Tennessee, so they decided they're going to take a rifle outside and shoot this thing. But they got outside, nothing out there. Had run off, and things progressed a little further. And on this particular property, they had hogs, and that was a staple at the time. It could have been sold for money or food or multiple uses. And their hogs kept going up missing. So they thought just
Clean up detail. Just saying.
and,
I'm in Jersey. We have mafia. I can't help it. Go ahead.
they thought some peckerwood was coming around just stealing their hogs and taking their livelihood and whatnot. So some family members sat out and did a bit of a stakeout and was watching the hog pen, seeing if anything, who this person was that's coming and stealing their pigs from them. And they said one of these members was one of the meanest men to ever bother daylight. He committed a lot of crimes, and he was just a very aggressive person when he wanted to be. And he was out there doing the stakeout, and they described it. They said it looked like a big gorilla loped out of the woods, stepped into the hog pen and grabbed one of the hogs by the front front legs and the back legs, slung it over its shoulders, stepped out of the pen and went back off into the woods. And the man I was telling you about said he wouldn't have shot it for anything because it would have just made it mad and it would have came and killed him. Well,
that big.
that big and that frightening. And he wasn't the type. Would you say he was the type to get afraid by anything?
I would say probably not. I've never met him, being as how this was back in like the 50s, 60s, but just from hearing stories, I'd say he was not an easily intimidated gentleman.
Not at all. And things kind of progressed a little bit, time passes. And my dad was born in 68. And when he was growing up, him and the other kids, they'd play outside, play in the woods, do what kids do. And certain days he'd go outside and he'd hear this screaming and hollering off in the woods. And the adults would tell him, don't go out in the woods today. There's a Bob Wowster out there. Now, the adults, they didn't know what a Bob Wowster was, but whatever the screaming was, they just gave it a name and said, don't go outside, don't go messing around in the woods. There's a Bob Wowster out there. And as my dad got older and started learning more and more about Sasquatch, he slowly realized, now wait a minute, those hollers I was hearing back then, that was like the sounds of a Sasquatch. And he was always very obsessed with monsters. Growing up, he was obsessed with like the universal monsters, like the werewolf, the Wolfman, Frankenstein, and all them. Had the little toy models he'd paint and whatnot. He loved monsters, and that would, I think that helped bring things along too. And Gab, I'm going to let you take the next phase of this.
This all sounds so familiar, doesn't it, Steve? With the monsters and the universal monsters. You don't realize who you're sitting here talking to. We're kind of cheating here. You're playing our music. You know what I'm saying? Steve
Yeah.
here's written I don't know how many books on cryptids and everything you're talking about. What part of Tennessee you grew up, Steve?
I grew up in East Tennessee, Knox County, West Knox County, but my dad's from Fentress County over on the Cumberland Plateau. So I've heard a lot of these stories from that part of the country too. Where they were at there, the farm, 900 and something acre farm that they grew up on, the backside of it bordered on the Cumberland River there. And on the other side of the river was the Big South Fork wildlife area. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff up in there.
There's a lot of things moving in them hills, that's for sure.
That's for sure. And I spent time in Huntsville, Alabama. I was stationed at Redstone Arsenal. When I got out of the Army, I bought property up there in Tony. So I'm right on the Tennessee line. That's where I had a lot of experiences too. So I didn't grow up there, but I spent just as like half my life there and half my life in New Jersey. So we've been rooted in this for decades now. Steve and I always kid like over 100 years of this, and you guys too. So that's why we're so excited. We're like jumping beans over here. We're so excited. We thought we'd explain. So Gabrielle, please go ahead. Tell us yours.
Of course. So this next part of the story picks up in our time. We were probably, what would you say, like 5 and 7?
Yeah, something like that. I was like the one of the tiniest human beings you could ever imagine, just incredibly tiny little kid.
We're talking getting the kitty menus until he was 13 tiny.
Yeah, bringing the sippy cups when I was completely out of that, or the little kid cups when I was completely out of that age range. But
total short round.
Right.
Anyway,
right.
We were little, and we went camping at a state park called Montgomery Bell State Park. And the park ranger went around inviting people to come watch a documentary the park was presenting, The Legend of Werewolf Springs. And that was a local legend that my dad had heard about the time, and he was into werewolves big time. So, of course, it was decided we would be going to go watch that documentary. And it's funny the things you remember, because I specifically remember this little stuffed dog I had with me that I was watching it then. And I didn't want to go. I thought it was just like a werewolf scary movie. I was 7 at the time, so not into it then. But we go, and I liked it. It was a very fascinating documentary about an event that happened in the 1800s. The legend says that a circus train had crashed, and they had caught all the animals except for a male and female of what they called the wild man of Borneo. And ever since then, people claim to see a big, hairy, wolf-like creature off in the woods. And allegedly, that creature even has killed people before.
On multiple occasions.
But some people claim to still see it even to this day. Probably not it, probably like descendants of it. But anyway, it was decided that we would go on a hike in the area where it was most notoriously seen, Werewolf Springs. The true thing was Hall Springs along Hall Cemetery Road.
I don't know how it looks down there too. Kind of give them a layout of the
A
land.
layout of the land. So it's really far off in the woods. You would drive through, it used to be fields. There's a lot of houses built up there now, unfortunately, but there did used to be nothing but empty fields for quite a distance. And then there's a cemetery off on this side, and then it's nothing but thick, thick woods and a long straight path that goes down. So we go hiking, me and my brother and my parents and my grandmother and my cousin. We hiked way off into the woods, and I remember it being overcast that day. And we'd gone off trail at one point, and we kept finding strange things there, like bird feathers that had just been plucked off in a circle, like something had just been sitting there plucking. And we
Wow.
found a wallered out area in the grass, like something that had
Wow.
been bedding. And a train whistle passes by, and as the train whistle went off, we hear the loudest howl, almost like a wail. It was just so long and loud and drawn out. It really put you in the mind of like the tornado siren when it goes off, just that range and distance and that much noise output. My dad always described it as sounding like a 200-pound wolf. And
800-pound wolf.
800-pound wolf, yes. 200 pounds wouldn't be much for a wolf. I misspoke. but I've never heard another sound like that. It was just long and loud and mournful.
You know when you pull up to a stoplight and the people in the next car over, they've got
Yes.
that booming
Thump,
music,
thump,
just
thump,
hears
thump,
this
thump, the
terrible noise
bass.
in your ears, but you can feel it, like, vibrating through you. This was what this was doing. You could feel it shake and rattle in your chest and whatnot. And it at the age I was, it absolutely frightened me to death almost. I still remember my cousin because um, some of the ladies with us, they had to step off and into the bushes and use the restroom, so to speak. I still remember my cousin running out of the bushes to get back to the group, and she was trying to run away.
Just bet.
She was booking it,
I
and
bet. I
my
just
dad,
bet. I'd be running too.
my
You
dad,
know what I'm saying? I've got all kind of visions. Just imagine coming out of there. Steve told a story once about a lizard running up his dad's pant leg, or with it, and doing a dance. I'm
Oh,
imagining something like that.
he did the Watusi, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I'm always scared that I'm going to see something out in the woods, but it's going
Mhm.
to be right in the middle of when I have to use the restroom or something.
It will be.
And like right as I start, you get like a big dog man start chasing you or something. I'm like,
It'd
oh
be
great,
awful.
what do I do now?
It'd be awful. Don't think we don't think about it. I mean, Steve and I talk about this kind of stuff all the time when it comes to going in the woods and everything going to the void.
And
The sound void and all. We're all up in all this stuff, sweetie. I mean, I just love it. We understand. That's the signal, though. When you're in there and they say there's a growl and it rattled you from the inside out, and like it was bouncing around inside your rib cage. It's just the same type of thing. Everybody has a different way of describing it, but it's the same thing. And definitely, before this is over, I want to talk about the supernatural part of this, because Steve and I have been talking about several shows of that aspect of it, and we're both Native American bloodline, and kind of grew up in a place where we were told that early, they're half here, half there, and they can do things, and just all that. It's just wonderful to hear. Keep
I believe
going.
I've got some Native American in me somewhere.
I'm sure you
My
do.
grandma, she loves genealogy. She says it's in there. Um, I couldn't give you the exact link.
We haven't found the direct link yet. Genealogy records were poor back then, especially among the Indians, but
Sure.
we have always heard that it is there.
You can kind of tell more by your DNA memory and the things you're drawn to. That nature connection. It's if you go back far enough, we're all connected and come from the same place anyway. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah,
It's just like we're all got that, but it's how much of that nature. And I noticed you sent me a couple of pictures of you wearing kilts and stuff too. And again, from that bloodline, that area as well too, the connection to nature, the fae, the whole, just everything we're all connected to. I think that's a natural thing. And I
I,
think it's natural to try to see what's going on out there too, to try to respect it, but to understand it, you see what I mean? We're just trying to sort it out. What are they doing around Indian mounds? And what are they doing here? And do they like each other? And are they all the same? And, what can I do to avoid it at all costs?
right.
They get close enough to see. I mean, that's pretty much the quest, right, Steve?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And by the way, I want to thank you for not thinking that I was a cross dresser. And I forgot to mention I was wearing a kilt in those pictures. I'm of Scottish descent.
Yep. Murdoch here. So there you
And,
go.
yeah.
My dad had to leave me a little something because he knew the women and all the Native American women were going to take, my DNA over. All I have is the name and the kilt and the black watch. You know what I mean?
Oh,
But
yeah.
my brother still goes over there to play golf. You get treated like royalty, apparently, if you're, certain names. And we're all connected, Steve, right?
I would love to go.
You look great in a kilt, by the way, sweetie. You would look great. I'll have to ask Nick about that. Maybe we get you one for Christmas.
I don't know.
I think with that beard now, come on. You come on.
Need a little tam o' shanter,
Your knees would do just fine. Your knees would be just fine.
It's one of the most comfortable garments you'll ever wear.
No kidding. No kidding. Some people get a little too comfortable in them. I remember when I took my sons to the first, all right, I'm telling it. Took my sons to the first festival. I said, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. And there was this cheeky monkey, this elder man, but had to be 95 if he was pushing a day, sitting in a wheelchair, just greeting all the women. If you know what I mean. My kid was like 7 and 9, and I'm like, that doesn't go on all the time. That doesn't go on all the time. It's just the haggis and everything else. It's fun throwing telephone poles, and anytime you reach back like that and try to pull out where you belong, what's your chain of, your, and you can connect into that, like I said, DNA memory. You get out into the nature, it's like, whew, I've always belonged here. That kind of feeling.
Yes, ma'am.
But please continue. And I made you guys a little video too before we start talking too much about Land Between the Lakes. I know this is how you got started, but when we get there, I want to. I got a little couple of drone footage and pictures and stuff to show them kind of what we're talking about, because we've got people all around the world. We got them in South Africa. We got them across the pond, Steve. We got them, Scotland, in Nottingham. All around, and they might not realize where we're, never been in the Tennessee hills and stood by the waterfalls and seen that leave of, not just back to nature, but away from all the unnatural stuff too. It's a big difference.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Well, I guess going a little further with us, that was basically the beginning point what really got us into it, because after we heard that, my family started researching into Bigfoot and different organizations and whatnot. And we ended up tying up with a group called Chattahoochee Bigfoot Research Organization. And they did a lot of work over in East Tennessee, over in Overton County. Um, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the name Mary Green, but she did a lot of research with them. Maybe even the person who owned that group, I'm not sure. But that was really the kickoff point. They'd have these you remember the big annual gatherings up there?
Oh, those were the best time. Researchers came from everywhere, and there were always outings and just people hanging out and having a good time, and fires and nice big dinners.
And did you get to go on any of the night outings? Because I was terrified of Bigfoot at that point. So when I was real little, I didn't like going out on the outings until I started getting to be about a teenager. Then I got obsessed with it.
I remember one specific outing. I didn't go on a lot of night outings. I always wanted to play with my cousin because she would come. And I do remember one outing. I don't remember how old we were, maybe like 13 and 11. We came and we sat in another researcher's car, and we couldn't get out of the car. You were scared 'cause you were still little. And we got chocolate milk from one of the ladies who were out.
I might remember flashes of that.
Yeah. But we had to sit in the car because we were still too young.
Right. But that was basically the kickoff for us. Werewolf Springs really was the diving board into cryptozoology for us. And my dad was obsessed with it, loved it for years and years. And we met a feller named Nathan Davis. He ran that he was the president of that group.
His wife was the one with the chocolate milk.
Was she the one with the
She
chocolate milk?
was.
And well, basically, he would often come up every now and then, come to Tennessee. We'd hang out and go do research. And really, that him and my dad is where the name Cryptid Studies Institute started coming from. They sort of as a team effort. My dad came up with the name, and they eventually birthed the group, so to speak, and just kept going on more and more outings. They ended up seeing 3 Sasquatch in 2009 in Montgomery Bell State Park. And I suppose the rest is history from there.
Wow. So any of those names sound familiar there to you, Steve?
Yeah.
And have you ever been to LB? Have you ever been to Land Between the Lakes?
I was supposed to go. A couple of years ago, there was the first Dogman convention that Josh Turner was putting on.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to be one of the speakers there at that, but my ride ended up getting COVID, and I didn't make it. So it was going to be in Paris, Tennessee. And I learned a long time ago, I've done a lot of these conventions and stuff. Don't ever stay at the venue, or you'll be, just covered up with people. So I had rented a fishing cabin up in the Land Between the Lakes. That's where I was going to stay, and then just commute back and forth to Paris to the Dogman convention, but wasn't in the stars of the cards, so didn't make it. But I've been through there, but I've never really spent a lot of time in the LBL.
It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I'm gonna show you. Listen, chat. I'm gonna show you the the beauty of this drone footage, because once you see where this is now, you guys, how close do you live to this? Now, I'm not asking you to dox where your address or nothing, but where do you live close to this? Because I can't quite tell from all the videos I've been watching for a couple of years now, trying to see, do you have to travel to get there, or are you close to it? Are you in the Kentucky side, Tennessee side?
40 minutes, wouldn't you say?
Maybe
Okay.
about 55 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
I live in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Okay.
It's terrible here. It's nothing but
Did you say
traffic.
Did you say Clarksville?
Yes, ma'am.
I went to school there.
Oh, Austin Peay.
I know exactly where it is. No. I'll explain. Not that kind of school. It was called Get Smart. I was a customer service manager for PetSmart, and that's where their school is, and it's right outside of what is it? The 101st Airborne, Clarksville. The base.
Yes,
I
that's
got
it.
you.
Yeah, it's right outside of there. So it is. It's looks like downtown Huntsville, Alabama is what it looks like. But you can go on the outskirts. Everything starts getting quieter, and more cornfields, more trees, more grass, and we're in, because then it gets rural crazy.
That's where you find the cryptid activity.
No
it's
kidding,
all
right? See?
Horrible city.
Mhm.
My family comes from over in East Tennessee, so it's flat land.
Mhm.
It's ugly here. And but if you, like you said, you get on the outskirts there, it's more
Just a
nature,
little bit.
more fields and whatnot, and you start finding some places with some activity. One of those places being Land Between the Lakes, which is about, like we said, probably about 55 minutes from us to the south entrance.
And you guys have something else in common too, Seth Breedlove, because you were in American Werewolves with our friend Ron Murphy, and Steve is in Skinwalkers too with
American Werewolves too.
American Werewolves too, Skinwalkers. There you go.
Cool.
That's great.
How about that?
Man.
So both of them are featured. So there you go, folks. If you want to get this episode autographed, just let me know and we'll send it to you. Can't do that. But anyhow, so that's small world, right? So I'll tell you what. Let's show the chat a little bit. It's a little 2-minute video, just some drone footage of the area and stuff like that. Because if you've never been to, like I said, in the South, whether it's Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Alabama, there are parts in there that just, if you stand just right, there's a place on Montesano Mountain right outside of Huntsville, Alabama, where in fact, I wrote a book about it, has Dogman and Bigfoot in it. I'm going to send it to you. One Day Love Cabin 22. And I'd love to get your take on it, because I had a lot of input from people. But the whole thing is about a Halloween night on a haunted mountain. It's got everything. That's the cause right there, because he bet me I couldn't write a story that had everything Halloween in it. And
even the kitchen sink. You got the kitchen sink in there too. It's haunted. So
if it's a black cat, if it's a Dogman, Bigfoot, but it's all about, it has. How would you say it, Steve? It's like the craziest stuff actually happened, and then I just had to make a bunch of fiction to connect it all, right?
yeah,
Something like that. But I'd love your take on it.
Based on actual occurrences.
Right now, it's in audio form on a playlist, and it's like 11. It's like listening to an audiobook. I do all the voices and stuff.
It's what, about 14 hours long or something like that?
I think so. I think
Wow.
so. But it's got everything. So I think you'd like it. So like I said, you could go up on that mountain and you could go to a cliff. And if you turn just right, and if you could get rid of all the power wires and get a good, it looked like nobody had ever been there, like a person had never touched it, and you can almost imagine what Lewis and Clark thought, or, some of the, the native tribes that were here and just cherished it, you know what I mean? And took good care of it, and untouched. There are still places that seem that way, folks. So here's one of them. But I'll tell you what, it's got a scary little secret in there. All right. Are you guys ready?
We're ready.
All right, here we go. Let me see if I can hit the right one now. Listen, you don't know me, but I'm really, really good at messing stuff up. I always hit the wrong buttons. So let's see if I get it right this time.
Just go. I'll be right back.
All right, sweetheart. All right, here we go. I hope you can hear it. Well, there you
I
go.
believe.
Huh?
I sure believe.
Yeah, I believe. I do. I do. Well, you're talking about grabbing onto that door and pulling it, Elijah. You know what I mean? There there was a story, and I can't remember who told it, but the whole thing I think that happens to you when you start hearing these stories, your mind automatically just very quietly, you might not even realize you're doing it. The whole time you're just processing it, you're thinking, okay, well, if I don't do that, it won't happen to me. If I get behind the door and close it, it won't happen to me. If I don't go into those woods, it won't happen to me. They won't come out of the wood. It's almost like, think of it this way, sharks. We can watch sharks all day long as we don't go into the water, they can't get me. Well, here's a little story. We had Sandy up here not too long ago, right? It was a big, horrible hurricane that hit the East Coast not too long ago. I was here for that. And the streets flooded so much with ocean, right? That we had streets and sharks going past street signs.
That would be terrifying.
So this is what I'm saying. And there's that moment where everything in that process of, if I don't do this or if I don't do that, the monster can't get me. And when that gets shattered, like something learns how to open the door. You see what I mean? That's one of those moments. And I think I had one of those moments. You were saying in a story, I believe both you guys were watching, was it Legend of Boggy Creek or something? You remember watching that? Isn't there a scene in that, Steve, or maybe you guys remember, where they're in the cabin and they're up against a picture window, they're sitting on a couch, and all of a sudden the Bigfoot breaks the picture window and reaches in, and of course everybody screams and runs, but from being a little kid
It's one of
seeing
those movies. I don't
right,
remember which one, but
I
there's a
can't
lot of
either.
Bigfoot
That
movies
sounds
back
about
in the day.
Wasn't the guy sitting on the toilet at the time, like
Oh,
reading
I
the
don't.
newspaper or something?
It's possible. It's
The
possible.
bathroom window?
That's probably where you get your fear, not being able to pee in the woods without seeing a dog man. I mean, these things get put in our minds when we're little kids, right?
You got to tell
You
them
know.
Brian Bowden's story if they don't know that one.
Oh gosh, I could save that for the end. If you've never heard Brian Bowden's story, he tells it better. But I'll tell you what, it's almost in Cabin 22. So like I said, I'll send you the playlist and you can hear it and see if you can pick it out. But absolutely, it's that moment, and there's so many stories about people going missing. And again, with Steve runs two really big YouTube channels on missing persons and mysteries and untold story.
Tales Untold.
Tales Untold. You
Yeah.
have some missing on there too, because that was just on yesterday. You dropped that about that's on that one. I'm pretty sure it is, isn't it? Or is that on missing persons?
It's probably on missing persons. But
Missing persons.
which
But that's the
one? I
thing.
did a Dogman one about government involvement in creating hybrids and stuff. That's on Tales Untold. And missing person mysteries, I do some cryptid encounters and stuff over there too, and listener stories.
Mm-hmm.
But
So we've got that
try to
mixed in with
separate
the
that. Yeah.
right. Oh yeah. But the thing is, it overlaps anyway, because here's the thing: if it's aliens, if it's this, if it's all of them, is it possible as people are missing because of a dogman or a Bigfoot? And then you bring in what you just said too. I've got that on my bingo card, just so you guys know that, because here's the thing, being in the military and studying, gosh, from the JFK assassination through, so I've been doing this a while. I know the government can't keep their hands off of anything. So if they did find something, they would try to manipulate it to make it a weapon or to their use.
Yeah,
They do that with everything. So it's not out of the picture. But are they a natural being, do you think, these cryptids? Or are they coming through portals? Are they coming interdimensional? Or is there both? What do you guys think so far? I mean, are you just wide open and just anything's possible? Because even after 50 years, that's kind of still where I am.
You want to start with your opinion, and I'll follow up with kind of how I feel about things.
I think that there are a couple of different things going on. I do think at its core there is some sort of a natural animal with Bigfoot, like an undocumented primate, perhaps. I think some of the more bizarre seeming encounters people might have, I might think they could be demonic, demons playing on people's fears to just try to confuse or traumatize them. I think it's very possible that there's government or scientific experiments going on, a real life Dr. Moreau. So I think there's a little bit of a couple of things going on.
Like a Plum Island. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
some of
you're
them-
kind of wide. You're kind of wide open. Anything's possible too. We can't really write anything off. Elijah, what do you think?
Well, I basically feel the exact same way Gabby is, and to a certain extent, we feel that it could be anything. Largely, we take a natural approach to things. Um, well, let me back up. Like she said, I think you got a mix of things going on. Um, your weirder sightings and your encounters, I think that's probably something of a demonic nature. I think it's Revelation 16:14 says, and um, and there's spirits of devils working miracles that go out to the kings of the earth and to the whole world. Satan has the power to perform miracles. He can do grand deceptions, and a lot of these sightings of things you really can't paint it into a box of some normal physical creature because people say, well, it spoke to me in my mind. It
Yes.
appeared. It stepped through a portal. It vanished. Any number of things. So I truly think in those cases you got some sort of a spiritualistic nature, something demonic appearing in the form of these things. And I think it's probably to give people a deeper fascination with the occult. Because, you
Possible.
may start out with things like it's an undocumented primate. And then you start getting a little deeper into it. And, well, it can do this, 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 and that. And then you may find yourself later along the line getting into also all aspects of the paranormal and supernatural and until you're finally just openly dabbling in the occult and whatnot. So I think to a certain degree, um, with your more supernatural seemingly encounters, maybe Satan's doing the stepping stone method to people. Now, I do think there is something of a natural nature running around to a certain degree. And I'm going to show you. You can't really see it because, well, it's in a case and this isn't the best camera. I mentioned Miss Mary Green earlier toward this podcast, and these three little bags here have 3 samples of Sasquatch hair in them. She gave them to us, and they were examined, and they were determined to have came from an undocumented primate. So these 3 samples, they're still here. They haven't faded away. They disappeared into a portal. That's evidence that there's something physical out there.
And it'd be pretty hard for scientists to analyze something that wasn't of a physical nature.
Right.
The Bible says the spirit hath not flesh and blood.
Absolutely. Jesus himself said, Spirit hath not flesh and bones as ye see me have. So if a spirit doesn't have flesh and bones, why is it leaving scat, blood, hair, um, footprints with
Right.
dermal ridges, and even kind of going into the land between the lakes thing, when getting into the Dogman topic, there was somebody that was going down the trace. That's the main road going through the park. During the night, they're going down this road and they seen a Dogman crossing the path across the road. And they're watching it, and they said it was lingering on the side of the road like it was waiting for something. And 3 puppies came across the road, followed it,
Oh man.
which seems to imply something physical reproducing in the woods. And maybe you just don't have a large enough gene pool for it to be a very common thing that people see. Um, if I'm not mistaken, I heard somebody talking in a podcast about a different cryptid. It wasn't Bigfoot or Dogman, but it was said for you to have a operating population. I think they said you'd have to have at least 1,000. Well, I'm sure there's 1,000 of each one of those across every few states or something like that. So,
And as for not seeing it, I'd also like to point out a bobcat are in Land Between the Lakes. Have I ever seen a bobcat when I was in LBL? No, I haven't. That doesn't mean they're not there. It just means I wasn't in the same time and same place as a bobcat.
there's big wild cats like mountain lions up here. We've never seen one. There's bears up here. We've never seen one. Just because you don't see them doesn't necessarily mean that they're not there. And there's some other point in my head I was going to go to, and I sort of lost it.
I agree with what you're saying. Go ahead and take a minute to think. I agree with what you're saying about the physical and everything else. There's so many things here, and the not being able to put things in a box, that absolutely goes with the paranormal as well when we're talking about ghosts and anything like this. And that's why I try to stay open and try to, I've got my theories and things that I've settled on where I'm comfortable after 50 years, and that type of thing. And I agree with everything you're saying. When I was 6 or 7, the way I grew up, I wasn't with one set family all the time. We had a lot of in and out. So I didn't get to spend a lot of solid time with one grandmother or something like that. I was getting things in bits and pieces. And if you go back to my grandmother, she's 1890. She was born in East USA. So up in, in New Jersey, New York, Delaware area, Lenny, Lenape Bay, and Cherokee. So when she was brought up, what she was taught to do is not let anybody know you were Native. So every bit of information she gave me, it was almost like she was sending me a little secret and sliding it to me, like, keep this a secret, keep it quiet. You always kind of looked around if anybody was listening. It was serious, and I could see the difference between each generation, right? My mom was a little less, and that kind of thing. But when she was telling me stuff and she stopped, what she told me was profound, and I hung on to it. And one of the first things I ever heard about from being in the woods were picking herbs. She was telling me about those. She looked out in the woods. She got real quiet and she said, listen to me. If you're ever going the path and you feel everything, change, go back the way you came. I'd get that little piece, and then I'd get another little piece of, but why? And the subject would be changed. Just listen to me. Do what I tell you. That kind of thing. One other time she gave me a piece of, because there's things in the woods and I don't want them to take you with them.
Interesting.
There are things in the woods we don't speak of because they can hear you. These kind of things. So when you go to the Native American, now again, you can't paint that with a broad brush either. Every tribe is different, but most of them feel that they're very almost more like a people. Most of the names they have for them, and I know you guys know this, more of a people and more of a, like the wild people or the hairy people or just the people who are that kind of thing. And most of the names translate to stuff like that. So I was always of the idea, once I started getting all this other information coming in, is that there's more than one kind of the same thing. And I think that also, if you start bringing in manipulation from, say, government, or it doesn't have to be a government, some rich guy with a lab, on an island or something, like Dr. Moreau or Plum or whatever. You start messing with that, then it changes, you see. And now it's more them, but it still has that almost like an AI, like a robot, the input. And I also believe that there is something going on with these dimensions in the portals too, because Steve and I have both, almost experienced that type of thing where, if you went too far, you might come back, Steve with the tree and just go to sleep, all these different things that we've experienced. It's almost like we know it's there. And I'll go one further. I think it's getting thinner. So if you want to call it like the veil or the in-between or the dimensions or whatever, it seems like there's more. And I don't know what this is about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. The Indian mounds. What is this all around, these Dogman sightings around these Indian mounds, whether it's in Ohio or whether it's Indian Mound, Tennessee or wherever. And as a Native American going to a lot of powwow, sitting around talking around the fire with the elders, we're hearing a lot of that too. And some people are saying they're guarding or something along those lines. And I had a great discussion the other day with somebody that said, it might be a bloodline thing. It might go all the way back to Anubis, Steve, and continue through. I don't know. That's a lot, I know, but there we go. Throw that about and see what you think.
Okay. Well, interestingly enough, one of the places I go to is called Indian Mound, and there's a lot of Bigfoot activity. There's supposedly some Dogman activity there. And, you automatically put two and two together, Indian Mound for strong activity and whatnot. And I don't know, some of your encounters that take place amongst the Indian Mounds, I'd probably label that as something of a supernatural nature, trying to build that connection, between
Then you have the fact that they're already in quite rural areas anyway.
Right, and you're not gonna have a whole lot of people there because who's ever at Indian mounds and whatnot? It's kind of like Bigfoot in cemeteries. You often have Bigfoot activity in cemeteries, but nobody's ever there. They're relaxing places to go to if you think about it. Um, but as for, I would probably box that as something more of a supernatural nature in that. And are you familiar with the Bell Witch haunting? Little bit. Um, well, the Bell Witch was known to it
That
openly said
Steve is real good on this one too. So I'm going to shut up and let him talk to you on this one.
Oh, okay. Well, the Bell Witch, it openly called itself a demon, like the Bible describes. Talked about Satan, talked about Jesus. It openly called itself a devil. And it would appear in the form of various strange animals. It appeared as a black dog. It appeared as a big giant bird once. Some versions say it appeared as a bird that was covered in hair as opposed to feathers. And even one person that was there said that appeared as like a two-headed dog or something like that. So it's not out of Satan's repertoire to be able to appear in various forms. Um, Consider the verse that says, "Marvel not, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light." A projector, it's based off of light. And there's even, you remember that story from um, Monsters in America, was it? Monsters Among Us? Of the woman that went into the church and it just looked like a werewolf shape appeared around her.
Yes, I do remember that.
Well, this woman went into a church and they're having a service and it just looked like a werewolf shape was appearing around her. I don't think it looked like the Howling transformation or
I
anything.
remember this story. Yeah, it was something, and
Yeah.
everybody gathered around it. Yeah,
That,
I think that was Linda Guthrie, wasn't it?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
and weird
Gotcha.
detail that had cloven hooves. It didn't have paws.
Mm.
And I think, according to her, a bunch of people dove on her and wrestled her,
Yep.
and it looked like the image of it disappeared.
Yep.
The overlay was gone, so to speak. Which, like I said, that would not be difficult at all for something of a demonic nature. Considering the Bible, it appeared in the form of a spirit, and it was perceived to be Samuel when King Saul went to inquire from the witch of Endor, who was a necromancer. She conjured up something that came out of the earth, and they perceived it to be Samuel. But it wasn't Samuel, obviously, because, God wasn't speaking to Saul at the time. He was speaking to him neither through Urim and Thummim or through dreams. So Samuel, he was the prophet of the Lord. He's a very good man. He's not going to speak to Saul. So you got something of a demonic nature there appearing in the form of something else. That's a biblical example. So I think, like I said, I think
It could be anything at this
and I
point.
think you got the supernatural appearance thing.
Yeah, and
Which,
it could be all of the, like we said, it could be all of those things, but there's also something going on with this connection between the Bigfoot and the Dogman. And just so people know, me personally, I think there's and Steve and I've talked about this many a time. There's a difference between the Wolfman and Dogman. There's a difference in my mind, and a difference between Dogman and, say, any other kind of cryptid out there as far as that goes. And there's a difference between the types. There's something else I was told by a lot of the elders is there's different types of Bigfoot, and not just because culturally or where they're at, their atmosphere and all that. Because, of course, Yeti would be, different, and his camouflage would be different. That's a natural thing.
Mhm.
I mean, actually in disposition and the whole purpose. And there's almost a stronger, meaner, more of a protector that's kind of off in another dimension, portal, however that you want to explain that almost comes in and helps. Almost they're vibrating on a different frequency, which is why all this thing is blurry and this and that. Also, what you were hearing is this new kind of really come to light, where all this trail cam, they know the trail cams are there. They know the light. They know this. They know that. I've heard stories of fighter pilots and things flying over large areas trying to get radar, get readings, and things, and turning on this laser. I don't know if you're familiar with any kind of military equipment, but there's several where you can point with a laser and the bomb knows where to go, if you get my drift. So they're out practicing this kind of thing. And it saw a Bigfoot digging almost in the snow. It was snow covered, so it really stood out. And as soon as he hit that button, it turned and looked. It knew before it got to him. Like when he knew it, it knew that, almost like he connected into it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds weird, whether it's an energy or a thought. It's almost like, here we talk about ghosts and everything all the time, and I know for a fact that when you connect into a loved one, they connect into you. This is how a lot of times, that connection really never dies, that loved one, that connection. So there's got to be something with an energy connection or a thought connection where it knows when it's thinking of you. Like my granny said back when I was like 7, it knows some of these things. You don't even have to speak it, you just have to think of it and they know. So you leave it alone. And I'm hearing a lot of that. Steve, are you getting a lot of that too lately, where we're getting almost an amp up from like Bigfoots?
Yeah,
like once you see them, you're almost connected, and the Dogmen too.
It's advancing. Whatever's going on, it's getting stronger. It's
Or we are.
People, the vibration is rising, negative and positive vibration. It's headed towards something here.
I think we're definitely, something's coming to a head fairly soon. I think, because have you noticed the government's talking a lot more about aliens too?
Yes.
Something seems to be building.
More than likely, that's a setup for Project Bluebeam, but
Right.
but we won't get too detailed on that because the inner tubes will throw me right in the water. But we talk in code. But well, that's it. It's like if you get everybody amped up in the fear, and you were saying that earlier. I've heard many other people talking about that kind of thing too. It's like you and I spoke on something earlier today, and I was saying fear. Listen to me. A dark, I don't care if it's a dark entity, I don't care if it's ancient, I don't care if it was human. Go ahead, you got to go. If it was human, whatever. If negative draws negative, and negative fear can draw negative. I don't know if you guys know about Lush and stuff like that. The energy that some of these things feed off of your fear. Basically, it's fear energy, and so does all of this. The darker side, let's say, of people, they do too. There's spelling and everything else. A lot of it's fear. If you go to hoodoos and things like that, it's the buildup. It's not that it doesn't have something, but man, they can build you up and get you to, get into that fear thing. You ever notice even old stories will tell you that once you start getting into that, you're caught like a fish on hook. So same type of thing. I'm pretty sure there's so much going on, and I don't know whether, like you said, if it's because we're amping up, and Steve said that maybe our vibration, our consciousness, we're getting more open to that. And it's almost like the light and the dark separating.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar to adrenochrome. They believe the more afraid and terrified a person is, the more potent. You're
not wrong, baby. You're not wrong.
Realize that maybe that's why some of these things like to
terrorize first,
like to kill and eat people, and like to terrify them at first because it will grin at them allegedly.
It's supposedly it changes the I hate to get graphic here, but it's the taste. So that's just it. And I think there's a lot of gosh, a cat will play with a mouse for an hour. And I'm not saying cats are evil, but I'm just saying there's an instinct there. And I don't know if that's some kind of, just a genetic memory of something, like when certain cats will, if they're really, if their DNA isn't, so watered down, they'll go up and hit water and they'll move it before they drink it, because a cat in the wild will not drink still water. They move it first because they know it's bad. It's stagnant. Right. You see, and it's cats and dogs very well. Dog will eat anything. But any cat, small, large, primal or otherwise, will not eat bad food. So it's the same. There's a lot of different animals like that. So if Bigfoot, let's say Bigfoot is, without putting a label, let's just say it's possible that it is some type of, like natives say, woodland people. Okay. It may be the missing link. It may, all of those things. It doesn't matter because we're animalistic too. We have DNA memory as well.
Well,
So,
Mr. Steve, at the very beginning of this, he was talking about feral people in Kentucky.
yes. Go ahead. You want to tell us a little something on that?
I would tell you, but I don't really have a whole lot of information on the subject, unfortunately.
And I know Steve's got a lot of good videos on it, but here, do you think that could be out of the question? You guys have walked for miles and miles, probably days and days, and never seen another person out there. And if you're going hiking or if you're going camping or just caving, my boys like to cave in Alabama. I don't see any reason why large groups of people, and I'm not talking like Last of the Dogman or whole, out in the Oxbow somewhere, although I can't swear it couldn't happen, but people could be up on a mountain and just leave everybody alone. Back when in Alabama, we lived for a short time in a place called Gurley, Alabama, which is getting way rural, almost into Tennessee, but on a different end. And they had Green Mountain. And it was well known that the people who lived on Green Mountain didn't want you up there. And a lot of people went up there, didn't come back. First you had to get past all the dogs. Then you had to get past all, their picket guys, I remember there was a joke. A friend of ours came over and we were kind of at the base of it and off to the side. Sometimes these people would come down like maybe once, twice a year, supplies, sugar, different things. And I worked at the feed store part-time and met quite a few of them that came down and, wonderful people. They just wouldn't be left alone. So I know there's groups around that would have to be.
I certainly think it's possible. I mean, you don't know what's in these woods because there could easily be a bunch of crazy people out there, like
honey, then you got your moonshiners. You got your moonshiners,
or something,
yeah, your marijuana growers, your meth cookers, your moonshine, apple pie moonshine makers. You got all this stuff up in a thing in places you'd never know. That's another thing that's in cabin 22. There's moonshiners in there. So I told you it's got everything. But the thing is a lot of these people want to be left alone. And you don't want to. No trespassing means something totally different in the South than it means out here. If you're in the city and you have no idea what it'd be like. Listen, I used to shoot off my back porch when I had my morning coffee. Just boo, boo, boo,
And,
gosh, well,
start the day.
Isn't that a great way to start the day? I mean, you get, I had 11 acres of uncleared, behind. Where's it going? And just shoot into, how you get your hay bale, you put your target on hay bale and shoot a couple bottles, get through the rest of the week, But anyway, and it's, again, it's a more open way of living, but you kind of have to learn how to coexist with what's already there. I think that's what the big mistake was made in 1462. They just kept pushing us. They pushed us all the way from the coast to New Jersey, all the way to Oklahoma. That's not getting along. That's taking over. What we're saying is when you go to the woods, you have to assimilate to what's around you. Right, Steve? He was just talking about feral people in Tennessee. Do you have any info on that you want to throw out there?
I've got several videos about it. There's a chapter in one of my books about feral people in the Smokies. There's a guy on YouTube called South Force 10. It's got a real interesting take on that. Yeah, he talks about back in the 30s, some of his relatives were hired to go in there and kind of thin these things out of the park, or out before they built the park, when they were getting ready to build the park. And the guy's older than I am. He's on up in his 60s, but he seems to know what he's talking about, and it makes a lot of sense. And there are lots and lots and lots of places you could hide out there, and if you knew what you were doing, you could live off the land and stuff. I always like to point out the case of Eric Rudolph, the Olympic Park bomber. He hid out in Nantahala National Forest for several years, and he was somebody that he only had like basic training and things. He'd been in the military, but he wasn't a survivalist or anything. So it's possible. And that's one of the theories with the missing people stuff, that there's some kind of feral Bigfoot hybrid cannibal something or other out there that likes to catch people and eat them. So your mileage may vary.
excuse me, something interesting I recently came to know. I recently came back from a trip to California and I was doing a little research. Humboldt County, the area of the Redwood National Forest, highest recorded number of Bigfoot encounters in California. Want to take a swing at the most reported number of missing person cases in California? Humboldt County. I just think it's a pretty interesting comparison.
That's very interesting. We've got
Yes.
a book in the other room, actually. It was written by Dave. Well, it was put together by David Paulides, but it's a book full of newspapers from like the 1600s all the way to like the moment of public domain when this was
Wow, Steve.
released, and it talks about uh, gorilla sightings, giant sightings, and wild men. And I think one or two of those newspapers maybe stuff like a wild man was wrestled out of the woods today. Now, Steve, like the story of Jocko, is that generally considered to be like a Sasquatch or possibly a feral person?
I would tend to lean more toward feral on that one, but can't say for sure. I wasn't there, but yeah, there's all kinds of stories like that. You go back, I've got a subscription to, I think it's newspapers.com, and you can go back and pull up those newspaper articles. There's all kinds of stories about wild men and escaped apes and things like that, or uh, other stories where there's something in the woods, and that was just kind of the cover stories. Like, well, maybe a circus train wrecked and things got away, but there's never any provenance or anything for that. So there's stuff out there that's been out there that can't be explained.
It seems like maybe a lot of places already have something going on, and they use the circus train angle, maybe like you said, try to explain it away.
Explain it away, but I don't
They
know.
always do. Cover up, cover up, cover up, cover up. But it's the same thing. The shark is in the water on 4th of July weekend, in Amityville. And they don't want anybody to know the shark's eating people. So don't tell it. Just go out there, try to catch it if you can. Keep it on the down low because we don't want to lose the tourist money this weekend. I mean, there's Jaws movie right there, but you can't tell me they're not doing that in the forest too, covering it up. They did an LBO. Go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
If you told people that there's things in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park that could take you and eat you, places like Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, those would all be ghost towns. Nobody's going to want to go there. So that kind of goes into the containment theory too. That a lot of these national parks were set up as a way to keep these things in the wood and keep an eye on them and give them a place where they can roam, and that's kind of their domain.
Like
hey, Davey.
It was flooded around there. There was just a couple of smaller rivers on the outskirts, maybe even one. No, it probably would have been both rivers, but John F. Kennedy flooded it and made the largest inland peninsula in America. And you got Lake Kentucky and Lake Barkley now. But if you think about it, everything that's on that plateau is largely contained.
Absolutely. Great theory. And wasn't there in the Martin case, Steve, saw somebody carrying off a small, tell it. I don't want to tell it wrong.
The Key family had asked a ranger where they could possibly see a bear, and he pointed them out to an area. So they went down there, and then one of the kids like, Dad, there's a bear. And Mr. Key said he looked, and he said, well, that's not a bear. But he described it as a rugged man or a hairy man carrying something red over its shoulder. And this was right after they'd heard a just blood-curdling scream. So they think that may have been Dennis Martin, and somebody or something got him. And even Dwight McCarter, he's retired now, but he was the lead tracker in the Dennis Martin case. He was a ranger there in the Smokies. He talked about there being, he didn't really call them feral people or wild men, but he just said there's people that live way off grid in the park that you don't want to mess with. Kind of alluded to the feral theory.
Absolutely.
In my hometown, there's a park called Pocket Wilderness. That's like the town's name for it, but it's actually
like Laurel Falls State Park or something.
Yeah, you remember what he told us, right?
That there's been Sasquatch seen.
Yeah, we got him on video, and the park ranger, the guy that takes care of the park, was telling us that, like, when you walk down the trail, they used to mine in that park, so there's an old ventilation shaft you can walk into, and he's told us, I've been told by like 5 different people that they've seen a Sasquatch coming out of that ventilation shaft, and Sasquatch has stood up on top of that hill, and it was throwing rocks and limbs at my truck, and He's an actual park official who confessed, yes, these things are in my park, and his boss told him to stop talking
I
about
bet
it.
he did. I bet he did. I bet he shut him down quick. You know, so many. My head's going a mile a minute, and you know, every story everybody tells, another story, another story. So at that point, you know, Steve and I say this about ghosts. That we say this about UFOs. You name it. If listen, if there's 10 stories, 9 of them are fake, or 9 pictures are fake, and one of them's real, then something's going on.
Yeah.
Something's going on. And I don't know who's covering it up or who's got their hand in it or what.
1% of that 2% that if it actually exists, then there's something out there that's undeniable.
Mm-hmm. And I don't disagree with your assessment of something evil using something that's kind of bad but intriguing to lure in, like the spider or the fly. That's absolutely possible too. I think all these things are going on at the same time. I think that they're actual, you know, people, hairy or otherwise, a tribe that's, you know, more benevolent. You know, I know Native Americans and, you know, old ladies make apple pies and put them on the Giving Rock and get back a big chunk of obsidian that came from a volcanic, you know, obsidian has to be made inside a volcano. And to get a big chunk of obsidian, you see what I mean? Like the size of a man's fist. And in place of the pie is gone and the stone is there, where did it come from? There's not a volcano, you know, where this person was for hundreds of miles, give alone, you know, down the road.
Well,
So
we might have us a big business here. We'll just find a
right,
place to feed Bigfoot, and he'll
yeah,
start bringing
on the Giving Rock, right? And there's
rare
many, oh
appearances.
God, there's many tribes, especially Cherokee, same thing. They treat it, the whole thing as more of a spiritual thing, you know, the whole thing with, you know, banging on the tree and having them answer back, that type of thing. But you, as someone with some abilities, and Steve does too, and so many people in this chat do, I don't know whether you guys do or not, but you also have these filters. It's your general intuition that is amplified in some people in different ways. And you get that feeling of going in, everything's fine, everything, and no, something's not right, something's not right, something is right. I've known people that have kept going in a situation like that and maybe took one step and their leg disappeared. And they knew enough to stop and pull it back out. You know, if I continued to go. There's a famous story. What's the guy who was on Ghost Hunters? He's Scottish as all get out, a little bald dude. But anyway, his big thing is fae and water sprites and things like that. He was pulled off a canoe by one of these things underwater, pulled down underwater, had to wrestle back out, and it disappeared underwater. And that was something totally different. That was something more of lore, you know, than anything cryptid, I think. But anyway, portals, same thing happened to him. He came apart. I don't know how to describe it, Steve. It was almost like a wet mirror. So, you know, not so much like you would see the steam coming off a hot road, similar to that, but more like almost a watery kind of movement. Okay.
Like you're looking on a sheet full of mercury or something.
Yes. Oh yeah. Great way to put it. Just right in front of you. You could still see everything. So kind of like Predator in the Monster and Predator had that camouflage, that almost that mirrored moving type of camouflage. You know what I mean? Where you could see it look like vines, but something else was there. Kind of like that. And he literally did the same thing. In fact, that's where I got the story in my book. He put his hand in and he could feel it got cold. He couldn't feel anything on the other side, but real quick, he thought to himself, what if something grabs it on the other side, pulls me in? So he took his hand out and he backed up and he got out of there. And, you know, he went back the next day and there wasn't anything there. So apparently some of these things just pop up and then back out. You know,
kind of heard stories like that where somebody would come across something like that, maybe between two trees, take a walking staff or hiking stick, stick it in there. They can't see the other end of the stick. One guy claimed that he stood to the side of it, put the stick through, and couldn't see the stick coming out the other side of the tree. It was going somewhere, but who knows where?
Well,
who knows where?
Pardon?
I was saying, who knows where? I just like, just to finish that whole thing off, unless you guys got something else, I wanted to say, just to me, there's so much going on in so many different directions. And I think that's what causes, Steve and I've talked about this many a time. When you get to these conventions and stuff and you've got your dog, boy, you've never seen anything until you've seen a dog, the Dogman people and the Bigfoot people just going at it. And then you
And
get
the
the
UFO
UFO
people,
people.
they get in there and it's a Donnybrook.
So, and, honestly, if you listen to each one individual, nobody's wrong here. I think
There's
what
more drama than there needs to be in these communities,
right.
unfortunately.
If everybody would just like halt for a second and go, how many people, have this in, whatever they're studying? How much is it? Let's see how much stuff we have in common first before we start going off on the side, because just because your Bigfoot story or, Tom's Bigfoot story doesn't quite match up to Joe's Bigfoot story, it doesn't mean that either one is wrong or that either one of those don't exist. It's just you've seen a different kind in a different time, in a different place, a different type, or something along those lines. And I think the same thing may go for Dogmen, but there's definitely different groups that are more aggressive and seem to have more, I hesitate to use the word powers, let's say abilities. But even the kinder ones, such as the Bigfoot, because in my experience, I actually had that momentary, I don't know what you would call it, Steve. I hesitate to say telepathic, but we were definitely picking up something. He was definitely getting something from me because he reacted to my thought. It was very quick, but it happened. I have a very minuscule, but there's something else going on. Now, you sent me some pictures. And I don't know what order you wanted them in. I kind of put them to where I thought. So if you just want to go through them, real quick and give us a little bit, if there's a story that goes with it, we can pause and you can tell it like you want. You're in charge here. So I'll just flip them for you.
Well, to tell you the truth about the pictures, since I was at work, I didn't have access to my computer. So I was like, well, let me go through what I got, and I'll send what I can.
I
And
like it. I like this place.
I sent an assortment of stuff that would be considered strange. I was like, well, she might want to talk about this or this or this. So I sent an assortment of things. Gab, would you mind telling them about this cabin, and I'll be right back.
I like this cabin, Steve. I can move right in. How about you, Steve?
Oh, yeah, I like it. I just messaged Nicole and said I like that cabin.
Lakes. It is called the Will Flora Cabin.
Uh-huh.
And what's super spooky about that is some people claim it's haunted. We have a friend, her brother. This story came from him. He was invited to go on a trip with his friends, which he missed, but he heard the story from his friends that they were out and about there camping. And something kicked the door off of its hinges. They never saw what, but the door just flew open by itself. Excuse me. He said there were no footprints outside, that there were little girls giggling off in the woods, and that he heard stuff in the attic. So that's a very terrifying story. So me and Elijah decided to go check that cabin out for ourselves some much later. And sure enough, the cabin door was absolutely off its hinges. The screws were broke off in it. And Elijah didn't like the idea of camping on a place that didn't have a door on it in case, a Bigfoot or a Dogman or anything tried to get in. So he fixed it. And a few months ago, we went and hiked to that cabin, show our friends, and guess what? That door was off its hinges again. Screws broke off and everything. And you fixed it with some heavy duty stuff too, didn't you, Eli?
Well, the first time we went there, I was told that the door was kicked off the hinges about 3 o'clock in the morning. And sure enough, when we got there and looked, the screws themselves were broken in half in the frame, like something powerful hit this thing. And we went down there and spent the night on Easter.
Yeah, it was Easter weekend.
And I brought some tools with me so I could put the door back on the hinges because I don't want to sleep in that thing with the door wide open with Dogman or whatever running around in the LBL. And
wild boar, anything.
Right. And they're all wild boar in that area. And during the eclipse when that was happening, my buddy was like, hey, I'd like to see that cabin if we got time. And so we hiked the good distance into it to see it and got up on it and seen the door was off again. So I go up and look at the thing, and the screws that I'd put into it, they were like bent in half. And these were good screws that I put into it. They're like the Starbit screws. They're the good ones. And they were bent in half in the hinge. So it looked like something may have came and gave it another big hit. So I guess
Wow.
next time I go camp, I'll be fixing the door again.
Fixing the door again. I'd bring a trail cam this time.
Making a special trip for us. This suck carrying tools in and camping gear. You're fixing it first and then camping.
But what about when I get back to camp and the door's off the hinge again?
Yeah, that's a distinct possibility.
Wow. That's something else. I don't have nothing on that, Steve, but I'll tell you what. I'd have a trail cam up there in about 5 different directions trying to figure out what the heck was tearing my door off.
I do want to mention too.
Here's your kilt.
Yeah,
Here's you and your kilt.
That-
Here's your kilt.
So y'all heard me mention briefly Nathan Davis. He was the president of the Chattahoochee Bigfoot Research Organization.
Yeah.
That's him over there on the right. Now he's a Davis, and we finally convinced him to start wearing kilts
Wearing
too.
his kilt.
So
Very
it was
cool.
a little Scottish night there, and he lived in Virginia at the time. That's Waverly Hills.
Yeah, he was probably living in Virginia at that time.
He came up because he would only get to come up every once a year or every couple of years, and he told my dad, "Hey, I'd love to go see Waverly Hills Sanitarium." And we don't dabble with like the paranormal, like ghosts or anything like that. We don't believe in that kind of thing. We believe that, not to beat a dead horse or anything, but no pun intended. That ghosts are something of a nothing other than demonic beings or fallen angels, because we believe the Bible clearly describes that death is asleep. It says, for David is not ascended into the heavens, his sepulchre he is both dead and buried, and his sepulchre is here today. It says, for the living know that they shall die, the dead know not anything, the dead praise not the Lord. And it describes in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, I believe, that when Jesus Christ comes back, he's going to raise up the righteous who are dead. Now, if you go to heaven straight when you die, why would he have to raise up the dead when he comes back? And there's a lot of verses that go along with that, but long story short, we don't actually do any ghost hunting, as you call it, but he wanted to see Waverly Hills very badly. So, we kind of was like, well, we'll take you up there. And that picture is up there at Waverly Hills Sanitarium. I probably
And that's a
could
rough
send
one
you
too. I
another
mean,
picture of the building now that I'm seeing that, but
yeah. That's a rough one too, because I know a lot of people go in it, and Steve and I and a lot of people in this chat would never go in there because of our belief is if they're there, they were so messed up when they were here. You know what I mean? I don't believe in what do you call exploiting. You know what I'm saying? And to me, yeah, that's how I feel about it too. Now, who's John Bell?
We were actually kind of offended at how disrespectful they were to human suffering.
They were doing magic shows outside of the Waverly Hills. They were projecting on the building images of like blood dripping down the walls and sounds of people coughing.
The people hating themselves. It was very important.
It's like too much for sure. Now, what was this one here? Is this somebody a legend in the area?
Bell Witch, yeah.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to, Oh, how about that, Steve?
That's John Bell.
Oh, it's John Bell's grave. Okay, I need to replace my glasses, and it's far away, so I have to looking at.
This one was interesting. This one I had never heard. This one, Steve, had you? The Legend of Grassy Cove.
That's a new one on me.
So Grassy Cove, it's a little small town just outside of Dayton, Tennessee.
Explain that to them.
Okay, it's a little small town just outside of Dayton, Tennessee, and in their legend, sometime after the Civil War, somebody was going through there was like saltpeter caverns up there, and somebody was walking through the caverns, and they found a soldier from the Civil War who had died there, and his body petrified or fossilized, and that generally the general consensus is things take millions of years to fossilize. There's actually some sort of a cave over somewhere in the UK where highly mineralized water will drip on things, and people will tie up a clothesline and hang teddy bears from it. And when the water splashes that, it'll actually turn to stone. So that's probably the scientific explanation for how that would have actually proof that would have happened. But anyway, they took the petrified soldier out of there and buried him in the church courtyard. And they started having like a bunch of like paranormal activity. I think the doors of the church were swinging open and shut, and there was terrible wails. And they kept having this problem until I forget if he was like the groundskeeper or what, but he was like, "Well, I'm going to take this man's body. I'm going to put it back in the cave." And as soon as they did that, it stopped happening. You don't hear that story a whole lot, but they got a little
Wow.
monument set up.
Never heard that one. Had you, Steve?
No, that's
There
a
we
new
go.
one
See,
there.
there's new ones out there too. Isn't that something? I love it. We hear something that we had never. Now, what was this? I couldn't figure out what this was, but I thought they might go together.
So the reason I sent that one in there, that's my dad, Johnny Henderson, and what he's holding in his left hand is we talk about giants on shows like this all the time, giant human skeletons and things like that. He's actually holding in his left hand a giant human thumb bone that was found over in Turkey, and it would have been like this bone right here, something like that.
Right.
But it's you can see how long it is, and it came off of a
Wow.
giant human skeleton. There was an archaeological crew that does a lot of biblical archaeology that came to our church, and they brought that along with them and showed people. I've got a replica over in the corner of the room over there. It's a giant human leg bone. It's a replica that was found over in Turkey in the 50s, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
They were doing a lot of road construction over there, and they dug into somebody's grave. And the feller, when he was put together, he would have been about 12 foot tall, I think, something like that.
Like the
But
Kandahar giant, Steve.
you kind
Like
of
Kandahar giant.
talking about Bigfoot. People are always talking about how they'll see these things and they're 10 to 12 feet tall. So when we're at conventions, we'll bring that giant human leg bone and show it off and say, look, this is how big a Bigfoot would have been, how big his leg would have been. But
Wow.
I didn't know exactly what we'd be getting into tonight.
Right. This was strange. Now, where is this?
Yeah, you tell about Hotel California.
Almost looks like a car wash of some
And
sort.
that's in line between
In
the
the middle
lakes
of-
as well. It actually used to be somebody's house before it fell victim to the ravages of time. But
you can find the pictures online of what it used to look like, by the way.
it's really
Oh,
cool
wow.
that people have it covered in graffiti right now. It's way far in the woods. People also claim to have Dogman encounters there.
Yeah, there's been a couple of Dogman incidents happen there, or potential Dogman. One was definitely one.
One person alleges that they were up top and there was a Dogman at the bottom.
Yeah, it was down on the bottom floor and it was sniffing the air, trying to sniff them out, find out where they were. And eventually this thing wandered off, and these people real early, late at night, early in the morning, was able to run back to their car, which that's not really a, if something's after you, a short hike into there, you got to walk down a path to get to it. So that would have been very frightening.
It wouldn't have been fun, and it's all downhill too, so that's
Right.
even less fun. It'd be an uphill.
I see so much stuff happening here. I just see so much stuff happening. And this was somebody's house. So people lived out here, and, it's amazing. When I look at it, I can see, 30 teenagers having the best party kegger ever. And then I can also see there would be a great place for like Mothman to hang out, and like out there in Point Pleasant in the great, what do they call those? The ammo, the bunkers that they have out there. Yeah, we just did one on Point Pleasant. I know. It's just, I'm getting so much crazy energy off of it. It's not. I'm not kidding. Is this also there?
At some point, yeah.
Is this also an LBL or no?
That is in the same place. Now it's a different part of LBL.
Right.
That's the Vampire Hotel that's up there.
Oh gosh.
We did a nighttime outing there, and unfortunately didn't get anything. But do y'all remember some years back Rod Farrell, who murdered a couple of parents down in Florida?
Steve? That doesn't ring a bell with me. How about?
I've heard
Yep,
that.
Steve got it.
Well, that is where he used to hang out when he was young. They would hang out at the spot. That's how it got the nickname, the Vampire Hotel, because Rod used to say he was like, had the spirit, or that he was a 500-year-old vampire, and they'd hang around up there, maybe drink blood, and I think they would like do vampire role plays or something. But he
Lord
would
knows.
hang up there, and it achieved the name Vampire Hotel. And you can even find today where people have spray painted the words Vampire Hotel across
I hate that they're
the
messing up nature like that, though. Can you imagine how pretty that would be without all that mess? But people are going to do. I'm surprised they don't have groups going up there and cleaning it all off too. Usually
if
you have
you're ever in
communities
that
do that
area,
kind of thing.
if you're ever in that
Like
area,
that.
that's one of the most beautiful spots in the park. It's a gorgeous hike into it,
I
and you
bet.
can't see it from the picture, but that when you're standing on the rock wall there and looking off, you could see the lake and everything. It would have been a beautiful home in its day.
It actually
Yeah.
did used to be somebody's vacation home, and I just can't help think when I'm there how nice it must have been just sit out with your morning coffee and watch the
I
sun.
can imagine. And a 500-year-old vampire. Hey, chat, maybe we should introduce him to the lady that married the 300-year-old pirate. She just got a divorce via exorcism, so she's probably looking for a new guy. That might be a
Maybe we should arrange an introduction.
an intervention, maybe something like that. Now, this was a footprint. I noticed a little flip phone here, so that looks like a pretty big print to me.
So yeah, that's a little bit of an old picture because obviously
Tell by the phone.
but that
But
was
still.
in Mineral Springs, and I want to point out that we suspected possibly that could be a Dogman print on for the simple reason if you look, it's wider up around the top of the print and it slims down toward the base of the print, and the
It
shape
does.
like a canine's foot, and we don't know if that was the case. We found what looked like to be Bigfoot footprints in the same general area before, so I don't know. But we found that like along the sand along the creek, and those pictures right next to it, those actually come
I
from
see it.
Bell. Huh?
I see the shadow. It's creepy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Those come from the Bell Witch Cave, and for those watching, this hasn't been covered yet. I'm not cross-dressing. I'm of Scottish descent. That's a kilt. That's not a skirt. And but the interesting thing about that picture is my dad was snapping a picture behind us as we were walking into the entrance, and supposedly a lot of paranormal activity happens in the entrance there. I've always been fascinated by that story, so I like going on the tour and
Yeah.
hearing the story and whatnot. But if you look closely along you can see my mom. She's leaned up against the wall of the cave there, and my shadow's going up against the cave wall. But that thing that's on the wall is neither one of our shadows. That's a completely different shadow that's there.
Wow.
And if you look, it goes over the top of her arm. It goes over the top of her, and you can see my shadow on the ground going off to the right. And if you look close, I've got it outlined here. It looks like the shape of like a Grim Reaper. You can see a scythe coming up, the shape of the hood and whatnot. Now, in between where the blade is and like the hood, if you look in there, I don't know if anybody can see it, but if it's blown up a little bit, it's if it's a little bit bigger, it's clear.
Looks like a face.
It's like a woman's face looking.
It is. I see it. You see it in Edna?
On my computer, you can see the nose, the lips, the eyes.
I see it right now. I see eyebrows.
It's very clear.
It's all, well, you can't see it.
I've
I'm
got
pointing
some
at it like you can
strange-
see what I'm pointing at.
I got some strange pictures out of that cave too. I had some pictures.
You've been there.
Chris Kirby, the lady that her and her husband owned that, she's a friend of mine. I went down there one time and it was just me basically, and her and her dog, and we heard things in there. I took pictures, and she's like, it was on the first digital camera that I had. We're sitting out in her gazebo looking at it later, and she's like, "There's nothing down there that even looks like that. I don't know what that is. It looked like a 2x4 or something, but it was black. It was jet black. It went from one corner of the frame to the other. But there's lots of weird stuff down there."
Wow. See, I knew you guys would know. I know a little. I was in Tennessee a lot. We were putting in-ground pools, so we were all over there. That was even before like the Saturn plant got built out there in Columbia and all that. Because like I said, we were over by, I don't know if you're familiar, but Huntsville. Then you got Tony and Scottsboro and Hazel Green and all that. And all that's right on the edge there of Tennessee. So I know some about it, but it takes me a minute to remember too. And a lot of this comes back to me. I look at this road, Steve, and I think about that thing that we hit with the car. I think about the thing that the story you heard about that. Tell him that one real quick and see if you've ever heard anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they were driving from Scottsboro up to just outside Knoxville, Tennessee, on a little back road about like that. And it was my uncle and his wife and a couple of the kids, I think, and then his son-in-law and his daughter were in the car behind. And he hit something with his car. He thought it was like a Black Panther or something
Oh, wow.
crossing the road. But his son-in-law that was in the car behind him said it looked like a guy in a wetsuit crawling across the road. He hit it. There was blood on his car and stuff. They went back and looked all up and down the road and couldn't find any evidence of anything other than the blood on his car. But then they hit something back there in the middle of the night. That area up there, around Scottsboro, Skyline, that whole area there, it's squatchy, as they say. Probably
kind of
Dogman in there too.
What you've seen in a way, like a Black Panther, but like a guy in a wetsuit in a way. Well, you seen the man is shape going
Yeah, I
across.
guess so.
I
What
mean,
Elijah
let's
is
see.
talking about is sorry to interrupt. We were in Land Between the Lakes about a year ago, and we came upon something on the road in the middle of the night, crossing the road. It was on the shoulder, and it was really long. It had about the length of a cat, but it also sort of put you in the mind of a bear. It's big, shaggy, but kind of brownish, blackish, shaggy fur. And it had the weirdest thing. It was like it had a man's back, that big, muscular, built up on the sides with a concave spine, and it walked kind of like this.
Like it's crawling across the road.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I just want to let that be known. But the guy that was riding with us, he's seen it, she's seen it, and he's seen a muzzle and ears on it.
Wow.
So she actually seen what may have been the beast of LBL. I was gabbing away to the guy driving, shooting the breeze, and I completely missed it. So I could have had a good sighting of something that night, and I was over here talking about nonsense or whatever.
It was bizarre, though. It was very long and very fast and very muscular.
Wow. Wow. I mean, similar. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of different things that I saw. I was a bartender when I was living out in the rural. So, when you got cornfields on both sides, and then you've got the weeds that come out the cornfield, just like that one guy, we're going to tell the story before we're out of here tonight. At the edge of the cornfield, sometimes the corn doesn't just stop. Sometimes it goes right to the edge of the road. But sometimes you have this like rough, thicket of weeds and other things that are growing up there. So usually when something steps out of the corn, you have a second to see a little bit more of it before it hits the road. But, in the way Alabama was, if you're looking at the road like this, where I lived, it went right up to the edge. So even when you got to a stop sign, that's where you got your break. So it was very cautious. You had to drive cautiously because anything could pop out of there and you wouldn't have, you don't have that little break of weeds most of the time. And the stuff that used to just pop out in front of my vehicle at 2-3 o'clock in the morning coming home from work. I mean, I saw something that looked like a duck-billed platypus with a rabbit's body and a beaver tail, but it had ears like a cat, and it turned and looked at me, and it just, oh gosh, when they turn and look at you, when something creepy like that, I don't care how big it is, it turns and looks at you. It's like it's all over because now it's aware of you. And it just, most of the stuff would just
Wasn't
pull
that
out.
the same area where
and
your
then
mom
keep going.
hit something in the road and
That was in Dismal Swamp in Deep Creek, Virginia. But I'll tell
Kind
that
of the
real
same
quick.
thing.
You're
Yeah,
not
tell
gonna
that
believe this one. You're not gonna believe it. So we're plowing along, probably doing about 20-25 miles an hour, because this was a very thin road back in the day. It's very early 70s in Dismal Swamp. So we're back roads. It's 15 miles to the store to get home. I mean, it was nothing in between but swamp and a very thin road. So it was very much like that. But here's the thing. If another car came, you had to like almost pull over and let them go past and then keep going, especially on the little bridges, because that's how narrow this road was. And if you went off, you were in swamp, and it got worse and thicker as it went on. So my job was to sit up front, in my mind, let her know if a deer jumped out or bear or something else, whatever. That was my job, to look and go, hey, something's, So we're plucking along, and all of a sudden I see this dark thing come out, like from the cover of the swamp there, the taller weeds and things. And it's about the size of a wild hog. I mean, those things get big. Those things, guys, they get huge.
Oh,
and I'm looking and I'm like, it's not. And my mind is trying to process it. And I know my mom sees it because now she's gripping the steering wheel, kind of up. and it went so fast. It's harder to tell it as fast as it happened, but my mind just processed. Okay, it's not a hog. It's not a bear. It's a bear. It's not a bear. It's something else. And meanwhile, we're coming up to it, and she's hitting the brakes, and we're getting closer and closer and closer, and she can't stop, you know. And as we get right in front of it, the way a Mustang was back in the day, it had that long nose, but it kind of curved down, aerodynamic, you know. And as we came up to it, we were going to hit it. It's looking right at us, and its face is changing as fast as I'm doing this with my hand. It was almost, if I had to explain it, I would say it was some kind of weird thing that fell in a portal, like Steve says, and didn't know where it was trying to get its bearings, or it was some type of a shapeshifter trying to zap itself out of there. I don't know. But we hit it, and you felt nothing. So my mom finishes, foot pedal, flat on the brake. She stops, and she just sits there, and she's looking in the mirror. She's looking at the things. It took a while for her to just get her bearings. And then she moved up a little bit more, and then looked behind us. We had the louver on the back window in this Model Mach 2. So you can't really get a good look. So this woman did the dumbest thing I've ever saw in my life. Her hand goes towards the door, and she says, "It's under the car. It's pinned under the car." And she's just whispering it to nobody. She wasn't talking to me. We were both kind of in shock. She opens the door, and her foot goes to step out. And just like she read my thought, like, "Mama, please don't do it." I'm like this against the door now, the passenger door. And she quick thinks better of it, pulls her foot in real quick, slams that door, and jets off. She didn't stop till we got home. I'm down like this. And when I finally heard that familiar sound of the gravel running under the tires coming up on the driveway, I knew we were home. So I look up. She hasn't said a word, not a word. She's just mumbling weird things for herself, like the water isn't moving, which meant it didn't jump and hit the water because there's no ripples, that kind of thing. It took me a while to process that as a kid. But anyway, we get in, and she just looked at me. She stops the car. She looks at me. She says, "Stay there." Just like she's mad. Now she's taking over. She's going to just don't move, that kind of thing. Stay right there. I'm like, I ain't going nowhere. She gets out very slow. She walks around the car, and I can see her in the mirrors as she goes around. She's looking for dents, marks, scratches, something. She gets past me. She goes to the front. Now it's the first time she goes to the front. She's standing there, and she's just looking. And that woman, who never broke over anything I've ever seen in my life, put her hands on that hood and just cried.
Wow.
She could not process what she had seen. She knew she hit it, yet there was no marks on the car, and it was gone. And she couldn't process it. And they say that these things are a harbinger. And if that's true, my mom was gone not weeks later. So I don't know. But that's but the thing is, the way I can't do it fast enough. I can't explain it. There's another unexplained thing. Didn't mean to go on. I told that as fast as I possibly could. There's a lot more to that story. It's in my book. If you want the whole story, it's in my book.
Fascinating, though. I'm very sorry about your loss, though.
Oh yeah. And that's why I said we all understand, babe. It's terrible. We just got to keep going. Now, is this is this saying Shipley Hollow?
So that is the corner of Sail Creek and Shipley Hollow Road. And why that is so interesting, it's an area that's like just outside of Dayton, Tennessee. They call it Pitty Pat Holler. And you don't hear much at all about that. It's been mentioned a couple of times. But Pitty Pat Holler in the 1800s, it was a greatly feared area to be at after dark, because it was so dark throughout there. I guess the trees would kind of hang over the road and whatnot. And it was just extremely dark. But a lot of people would report when they're walking down that road at night that they'd hear a faint pitty pat, pitty pat, pitty pat on the road behind them, like feet coming up on the road behind them. And something would stalk people on this road, and that's it. It got the name Pitty Pat Holler because of the soft pitty pat of this thing's feet as it would follow them. And nobody, to my knowledge, ever got a really good look at this thing, but it's sort of attributed to a death that happened down there. There was a woman in a wagon going down the road, and something attacked the wagon and scared the horses, and it wrecked. And the woman died, and she had 2 little kids with them. and it is presumed that the pity pat that was there took her kids and took it with them and killed them. And there was a doctor that was coming through that road one night riding on his horse, and he said the pity pat jumped on his horse with him, and the horse was bucking and trying to knock this thing off, and it terrified him. And they eventually got this thing off, and they ran as fast as they could to the next town, and he wouldn't dare go back through Pity Pat Holler at night. Now, some people who've gotten a sort of a look at this thing kind of described it as being like a black shape, and some other people have described it as being like cat-like. But incidents with Pity Pat Holler go back to at least the 1800s. And, there's been construction and houses built on that road now, so it's nothing like what it was. But I tell you what, there must still be something to Pity Pat Holler in some way, whether it's the legend or something actually still there. Because you remember that billboard that was up along the road?
I do. It's for some sort of a delivery company. It said, "We deliver anywhere, even Shipley Hollow Road."
So
I love that. I love that.
Up there.
That's great. That's great.
I
I'd
wish
buy
we
from
had
'em.
pictures of that.
Yeah, I wish we did too. I don't know why we didn't.
I love it.
actually.
And
Had you-
for the picture on the right hand side, would you like to tell about that? That's the Carter.
That's
farm.
the Carter Farm. All right, so that's been a pretty interesting story. Have any of you heard of the book 50 Years with Bigfoot?
I hadn't. Had you, Steve?
No, I don't recognize.
You heard of that pity pat? I saw you shaking your head. I never heard of that one. That's
There's
something.
similar
That's a
stories
Steve's.
where you ride by a place either on a horse or motorcycle. You feel something get on behind you until you get to a certain area.
That's creepy. That's just creepy. Go ahead, sweetie. I'm sorry.
You're good. But, excuse me. That book is now out of print, but it details 50 years of a family on this farm in particular. Well, they claim to have multiple Sasquatch living on the property with them. They even gave some of them names like Fox or Sheba. They claim that they found one of them as a baby Sasquatch, and they kind of raised it, sort of. So the Sasquatch really just sort of lived on their farm alongside them and treated them like family. They'd see it, and it was just part of their daily lives. One of them even had a blanket would carry around, and
Was
when
that Sheba? No, not Sheba. It was Was it Sheba?
I think it was Sheba,
Sheba
and
died and was buried with.
Sheba was even buried with her blanket. It said.
Now, how that story started, to my knowledge, is the man who owned the farm. He was cutting down some trees and some limbs and whatnot, and he cut down some limbs, and it fell on like a juvenile Sasquatch that was there, and it injured it. And he thought it was like a feral child, and he took it back to his home and tried to nurse it back to health, and it started going nuts, trying to tear the place apart. So he put it out in his barn, and the parents of the Sasquatch came and ripped the wall off of his barn, took it back, and kind of from that point, the little Bigfoot started hanging around the property more, and this guy ended up feeding it, and that's how they, I guess, kind of started a relationship with these things. It's a very fascinating story. One of my good friends, Gene McCauley, he was one of the main researchers there since, like, I think maybe day one, researching it. And I think he said, because I was listening, trying to regather all my details on it. I think he said that he's been over there like over 100 times researching. And it very fascinating. It was Mary Green's part of her research, her and Janice Carter. I think
Did we lose connection?
I think one of them's Miss Cisco.
I'm muted. I'm sorry. So what I was saying was that I know who you're talking about now when you say Mary Green. It takes me a while with names sometimes for it to click, but I know who you mean. And again, wonderful research. Steve and I talk about this all the time. We actually had an episode, I don't know, it was a couple of years ago now, called Bigfoot and Sepia, and the whole thing was re-watching that old movie that came out where everybody sitting around that picnic table were all Bigfoot hunters, have been doing it for 20, 25 years. And they told the story about I forget the name of the guy who said he was captured by Bigfoot and took off to a cave, and they held him and he got out by giving them all chewing tobacco or something.
Yeah,
Steve?
that was Albert Ostman back in
There
the
you go.
20s. He gave them snuff. He had a snuff box with him.
Made them all sick.
He gave them snuff and made them sick.
So, like I said, this is going to be going on for so long. And the point I made there was you've got all these people sitting around the table. This was got 20 years. This was 25 years in. This was 27 years in. This was whatever. That's a lot of knowledge to come and sit around that table and talk about what's going on. And that was in 1973. Here we are in 2024. See what I'm saying? And we're still, trying to figure it out. Now, to me, I know about a little bit about, because do a study for the book and everything else, and talking to all my wonderful friends, the Rougarou, all the different names, and again, we established that I think it's different than werewolf, and it's different than, I think it's different than skinwalker. I don't think all dogmen are skinwalker. I just don't. I think it's all different. Skinwalker is something I don't like to talk a lot about, my heritage and things like that. But the thing is, the amount of evil you have to perform to gain those specific abilities in that group, just that one group, is so devastating. The evil there, you just don't even want to go near it and touch it. Yeah. And again, this is what my grandmother was telling me, and many elders don't even speak of it because they hear you, they connect into that energy. And we have so many things in the supernatural realm and the paranormal that do that. Now, what I want to ask is, if you are in LBI, just say, this is why I put this picture up here. Look at this. One more time. That's loud. Sorry. If you are an LBI and you're in this little, imagine there, it's beautiful. But if you're in this little tent, that little tent, and this thing is out there too, how does that make you feel? Because I think they are. This picture up here in the corner, this is that, I don't want to say famous, but it's starting to get that way. This is the one that was caught, the lady caught on her, I guess, what, ring doorbell or whatever. She heard a big mess going on in her barn, and she picked this up on the one in the top corner. The other one's obviously a drawing of a similar thing. But boy, if you can see that, and this was a shot taken from that video. Look at the arms. Look at the shape of the. Now again, this could be a guy in a suit. If you knew how big this wood pile is, though, if you could see the rest of the video, you can pull it up. Dogman by Barn. It'll pop up on YouTube. But it's quite amazing to me. I have no doubt that these things are out there. Again, if 9 pictures are fake out of 10, one's real, something's going on. But that's what gets me, Elijah, is looking at these things. Look at this. Now, I remember you talking about in American Werewolf, you were talking about the different types, that most of the times you're getting this large head, ears up, sometimes back, just like, but these things are obviously extremely built. They're built to kill. They're definitely carnivores. They're not out there eating berries and cranberries, Do you have a couple of Dogman stories that you fall back on? I know we have one favorite one we'll save for the last, with the cornfield and the fence and the pool, because that one just makes my skin crawl. But would you be willing to tell the famous one about the possible RV? And, there's not a lot of proof. It could just be legend, but what would you like to tell about what's going on in LBI?
Well, Land Between the Lakes, it's famous for its Beast of LBL. And the most famous story attributed to it is an attack that happened on a family of 4. And that would have been about 1982 when that would have occurred. And it's the most well-known story to it. People have been talking about it for years, and there's multiple different versions. There's about 5 or 6 different versions of that story. And I think it all boils down to an original story. I do think something happened that was covered up in some way, but you got a lot of contention over what way it happened, how the events fell into place. But a general, just boiling the story down to its main elements, is that a family of four was doing some RV camping in Land Between the Lakes. They were up at the northern end, almost all the way at the top. And as it got toward twilight or the after sunset, um, they'd setting up their RV or was getting it all set up and whatnot. And one or two of these dogman creatures came up from out of the ravine and attacked and killed the family. Now, um, to talk about it real briefly, a gentleman I interviewed said that he was there and witnessed the incident as it went down, and they had a couple of shotguns with them, and they got a few shots fired off on this thing, and one of them was shot like in the shoulder as it was killing the son. There was a father, a son, a mother, and a daughter, and Mickey was there. This gentleman, and as the story goes, the one or the two dogmen attacked and killed the family, and when going off of the main version, when the family was discovered, and authorities got on the scene, whether they were government or whether they were the police, they were looking for a body, and they found little girl's clothes, and they couldn't find a little girl body, so they realized that there was a body missing. And the most famous version of the story includes that they were looking around, and one of the people felt blood dripping on his hat, and he looked up, and the little girl was dead, partially eaten up in one of the trees. Now, the gentleman that I interviewed, he claimed that from where they'd shot one of them or shot both of them, whatever. No, I guess it would have been shot one of them. That it wasn't the little girl that was dead up in a tree. She was about 100 feet away from the RV trailer, and it was one of those dogmen that was dead up in the tree, like it had bled out or something. And but the most famous version, the most well-known version that you'll hear is that she was dead up in the tree. This gentleman asserts that no, that was not the case at all. Got a lot of people agree with him. You got a lot of people that don't agree with him.
We'll never know, Elijah. We'll never know because we weren't there. And how happy, show of hands, how happy are you that you weren't there to be able to tell the story? Because I don't think anybody walked away from that, And again, you can never tell. We could guess all night. We could guess all night. The thing is something happened, and it's typical the way you described it too. In, several times I've heard you tell the story where you went back and you can see how they almost tried to erase everything, where they had like the showers. You can see the steps going almost to nothing, Steve, like those steps in the middle of the woods where they don't go anywhere, kind of like that. You can see all the different things. And that is not unlike, like I told the story of Jaws. Don't tell them the shark's in the water. Everybody keep it down. And I believe that happens all the time. And I know Steve does too, because we've talked about it an awful lot, Now, had you heard this story, Steve?
Yeah.
From LBI, absolutely.
Different
absolutely.
versions of it, but yeah,
Right.
I've heard one about the little girl in the tree. That is the most prevalent one, the most widespread. And I think probably because it's the most horrific, so that's the one people like to retell. But I've heard that the true version is not that gory.
And then
I just can't get over. Excuse me 1 second. I got to love my friend for a minute. I can't get over how damn good you look, Steve. I just love you so much. You look so wonderful. Doesn't he look wonderful, guys? I mean, he's happy. He's just got a lot of good things going on, and we're just thrilled. We're just thrilled. I just love him.
Our 1 year wedding anniversary is on the 13th, and we got a baby on the way in
September. So. he's glowing. He's glowing like I can't imagine. Nick must be lighting up the whole room if you're glowing this much. So, But I'm sorry, I digress.
For you, Steve.
There you go. I'm gonna be a godmama. So anyway, I just love it. Little man's on his way. So this is the thing. You take your kids out there, you want to go camping, you want to be safe. Now, many things were said. I think if you have not seen American Werewolves, if you have not seen American Werewolves 2 with Steve Stockton in it and Skinwalkers, please watch it. Right now, for a brief time, I believe it's available with ads on YouTube. Please watch it. Elijah's in there. He tells great stories. He walks you around. I love your coat, by the way. I want it. I have one just like it in leather. But anyway, and he goes through in detail, and I don't want you to miss those details. So please go watch it there. Seth does a great job. And I'll tell you what, the stories you are going to hear about Dogman, the guy with the dogs, the hunting dogs. Oh my gosh, this poor man, you can tell he saw something. You can tell his whole life was changed, But there was one in there that made my skin absolutely crawl. Steve, you might know this one too. And it started with a simple run. I'm going to let you tell it, Elijah. It started with a simple run. We won't say the man's name because we don't have permission to do that. And but I got to tell the story. And he said he's a country boy. He decided he was going to go. It didn't bother him to go out running, at dusk or getting dark. And he's going to practice running, like, I can't remember. I think it was like 5 miles or something. Running down the road, cornfields on both sides. Take it away, Elijah.
Oh, I'll be honest with you. That wasn't my story, so I'm.
Oh, I'll tell it then. So
so
y'all listen, because I know it well. I watched it 4 times today because it makes my skin crawl. So here's the thing: the things that you can get through if you just keep your mind. So he's running, and he's just a regular dude, right? And he's running, and all of a sudden he hears something pacing him, Steve. Now we've all kind of had that if you ever lived in the country. But he knows, because I'm telling you, just know these things if you're familiar with your area, that it's not a deer, because when he stops, it stops, and he can hear it. Can't see it because the corn's about 6 foot high, right? So he also knows that if a deer comes on, you startle a deer, it runs the other way, and it's got a certain hop, jump, run to it. It doesn't just, it's gone. It's not going to run along with you. So he just keeps running, and he's thinking, he's trying to process all this, and he's running and he's running and he's running, and he stops with him, and he can hear her breathing. He knows it's something big. He just doesn't know what it is. So now panic is starting to set in, and he's running a little bit more. Now he's trying to map stuff out. He's like, well, I can't go this way because there's corn, like we described before, and he can't go this way, corn. He can only go straight. And it breaks a little further up. I think, let's just say a quarter mile or so. Breaks up. And he has a buddy who has a house. If he takes a right, he can get right into his friend's yard. And he's very familiar with this guy. So he said that was his plan. That was his plan. So I'm just going to keep running. And when I turn right, I'm going to head for that front door. And he's like, okay, I got a plan. And I'm running. It's running with him. It's running with him. And then he realizes that if he turns right, there's a road there, and there won't be any corn. And this thing is going to run out of corn. And whatever is following with him, and he just makes a quick, hangs a quick right, he's going to run right into this thing because it's going to run out of corn, and he's absolutely going to run right into it. Then he starts, I think he said he was possibly military or something in the background, but he had some kind of bearing that just keep going. Don't think about it. Don't look at it. I know you're going to see it, but don't look at it. So he gets to the point, he makes the right. Can you imagine how hard your heart would be pounding right about now?
That would be absolutely terrifying.
Terrifying beyond belief, but you can't help it. You have to do it. This is his only out.
To keep running.
He's running. Oh my gosh. And he's right. And he turns right. And he says, don't look at it, because he said he said he was a little afraid that if he looked at it, he would freeze, and he didn't want to stop. They wouldn't be able to help himself. So he keeps going, and he hears the break of it coming out of the corn. And what do you think he did? He looked at it. He said he kind of did like a side shuffle kind of thing to look at it. And he said it was huge, just like the pictures I just showed you. And he said he could see it maybe from waist up because there was still weeds in front of this corn. So he still had a little thrush to go through, right, to get to the road. And he just books it, and he's running, and he knows it. He said it landed. He looked right at him. It landed on all fours when he stopped, looked at it, and then it started chasing him. And now he's booking. For all he's worth, he's running. There's 4.5 foot fence around the pool is chain link, and it was scooped like this. So I guess he looked back at all his gymnastic, basketball, whatever days, and he did that old thing where you push down like on a parallel and throws your legs over, and he pushed those arches of that chain link fence up. Those things are sharp, and he threw his legs over, and when he landed, it cut him along the side. So now he's bleeding. Because he's got a gash on his side, and he happened to land right in front of this guy's big in-ground pool. So he took one step and then dove into the pool. And he sunk all the way down. He grabs his nose, and he just sinks to the bottom and holds his breath. And he turns, and he's looking up. And this whole time he's trying to hold his breath and not breathe. Under this water, he's looking up and waiting for that break to see that thing looking over the water, or sticking a hand in the water, or jumping in the water. And he waited as long as he could till he couldn't do it anymore. And he slowly started letting himself come up to the other side of the pool, and he's looking around. And he doesn't see anything, but he doesn't know where it is. Now this is worse. He gets out of the pool and he runs right into his friend's front door, busts through the door, screaming. His friend's screaming. He slams the door. He's yelling, turn off the lights, turn off the lights, turn off the lights. The guy doesn't know what's going on. And he's looking out the windows and he's telling him slowly what's out there. There's something out there. There's something out there. Never saw it again. Now you know something is out in your yard. He lived. He made it. Terrifying to be at the bottom of that water, holding your breath, waiting to see that thing black out the moonlight in front of you, above you, or jump in with you. The most terrifying story I've ever heard.
Oh, it's terrifying.
That's absolutely terrifying.
I would die in the pool because I can't swim, so it wouldn't be the Dogman that got me.
Could you have come out of there? I mean, how are you not with your breath? He's running and he's trying to hold his breath after all of that. Steve, gosh, you've heard this story. I know you've seen it.
Yeah.
And,
Is that not?
He couldn't have had very far. He could have run too.
When you're hearing it, you're holding your breath along with him. You know, it's
He's
just,
very lucky.
Because those things are said to be able to run at 40, 50 miles an hour when they hit all fours. So that he had to have been pretty close to the fence once it hit all fours. So he could make that quick dive over. So he's probably lost his life by the skin of his teeth. Or
I can't even wrap my head around it. I can't imagine being, and something else that was said in America, in the film, and I believe it to be true, that it's so horrifying that people are going into these woods camping and thinking that they don't have anything more to worry about, the mosquito bites, right? And they're not armed, and they're not ready, for something like this. And you could look, I keep using the analogy of sharks in the ocean, but again, people just let it all go and everybody else is doing it. Look, we just pulled somebody out of the water the other day, big chunk taken out of them. I don't understand, I don't get it. And to me, it has to be some kind of, the more we understand each other, whatever these things are, and I think that's the quest, is to be able to try to coexist. I know that's how we feel, but other people just want to grab them and poke them with needles and experiment on them. So, what do you do? I don't know. What do you guys think? We'll do round robin, and then we'll do everybody's channels, and I'll let y'all go because I know people got to work tomorrow. And this has been fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So what do you think about that?
My honest opinion is that in this Earth's history, you'll never discover any of them. I just don't think it'll ever be fully discovered on this side of heaven. Whether it's the powers that be that's keeping it hidden, or people just won't get good footage, or whatever.
Or they're not wanting to destroy the timber industry.
Or they're not wanting to destroy the timber industry. I just don't think we'll ever 100% prove Bigfoot or Dogman. And we know that all that stuff exists. We know it's out there. People are seeing stuff. All these people aren't lying, but as far as the scientific record of these things existing, I don't think it'll ever happen.
Yep, there you go. And Steve and I have said this many a time. If they're going to poke him and prod him and put him in a cage, I hope they don't find him. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I agree. I hope if they do find one, either Bigfoot or Dogman, that's already deceased. What a life would that be for it to put it in a cage and poke it and prod it and draw blood and run DNA and all that on it. But just because we talked about earlier, just because we haven't found a carcass, that doesn't mean anything. I've been all over the woods in the Smokies and Washington State. I've never seen a dead bear in the woods. I've never seen a dead deer in the woods unless somebody poached it or something. That doesn't mean it's not out there just because you haven't found a dead one by any means.
And they're so rare anyway, the likelihood of finding a carcass is that much more slim.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And in my estimation, they're just dragging them back through the porthole to have a proper funeral on the other side. I don't know.
Cisco, before we
what
go,
do I know? Yes, please do.
Tell Sir Brian Bowden's story. You tell.
Okay. All right. So Brian. So anyway, Brian's out there with his partner, with his friend he's got the UFO, New York UFO and Bigfoot Society. I can't remember all the names. I always screw up names. I'm sorry, guys, but y'all know Bowden. So anyway, they're out and they're doing, very much the same type of thing. They're out Bigfoot hunting or Dogman hunting, whatever. And I can't remember exactly where they were. Upstate New York, I think. Was it upstate New York? So they're there and they always go with machetes.
Looking for Bigfoot, yeah.
Yeah. They're up there. They always go with machetes, and camera, whatever. That was part of their deal. So they had been out for a very long time, and I can't remember all the specifics with Al. I think Al was in the car. I think it was both of them, and they were driving out. They were done. They'd been out for a while. And Brian had to, here's your biggest fear, Elijah. He had to relieve himself.
No.
So they pull over on the side. Al says, okay, just get up and go. So Brian gets out and he goes to the side and kind of goes off in the bushes in a big thicket. You know how like you get a big old bunch of bushes and stuff, all different. And he goes up there and he's doing his thing. And all of a sudden, here's a growl. And then here's another growl. And it's that type that reverberates inside of you, that kind of growl. And he knows his stuff. He's been doing this for years. So he's like, what? And he says at that point, you just kind of like freeze and you're trying to, locate where it's coming from. He couldn't stop what he was doing. He's trying to figure out what's going on. And then he sees it. It's not very far and it just starts to stand up. The first thing he says is ears and then the head. And then he starts to see the eyes. And he just cut everything off right there. Starting to grab for his machete. I believe he said he had left that in the car and took it off. I can't remember whether he had it or he didn't. So don't quote me. And he goes taking off, running in the car, probably trying to put things back together as he's going. Jumps in the car. Out, go, go, go. And it comes out and chases the car. And I can't remember whether he said they grabbed it or not. I honestly don't remember whether he grabbed it or not. But he saw it and he felt like there was more than one. And he felt that the reason it was so angry wasn't just that he stumbled on his territory, but to the Dogman, that was a challenge because he was
marking
claiming
his territory in the Dogman's territory. And he said that's probably the reason that it didn't attack him right off. It was just stunned that, like, who's this peeing on my tree? What's territory. This guy doing?
Like a tomcat.
I can't believe this guy. And then that the Dogman was stunned to the point that Bowden was able to get away from it before it decided it had enough of
Ain't that something?
A tree in his territory.
Yep. So there it is. And you'll see a version of that I got permission from him. But I remember the day I had called him up and say, hey, Brian, you know that story? I said, that book I'm writing? He's like, yeah. I said, I'm going to use it, but I won't use your name. Is that cool with you? He said, absolutely. Absolutely. And he said, just make sure you have all the aspects in there. That he was upset because it was like a tomcat walking onto a sleeping tomcat and peeing in the corner of his, house and saying, I challenge you. Similar to a Native American going and putting a spear in the ground. You know what I mean? It's like that in the natural world, all these things have such profound meaning, and that's one of the things I always say too, is like, know about whatever you're going around, it's like, if sharks are in the water, stay the hell out of it. It's like, if you know that there's alligators in the water or cottonmouths or, whatever, I mean, you have to respect things, as far as that goes. I'm just that the thing we started with talking about the doorknob and things like that, that was one of the things in the story that was told about a Dogman. It was like, that was the thing when it came up and it opened the door. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about, but it opened the door. And I've heard this before. And I think going back to, again, the beginning of in that Boggy Creek or whatever it was, where you're sitting against this picture window on the couch, watching TV, not thinking about a thing. And all of a sudden something just busts through that glass and reaches in and tries to grab you. As a kid, I was probably 6 when I saw that, but I would never sit in front of a window. It changes you. You adjust.
It makes you think about that kind of stuff.
You adjust. And it's channels like yours and channels like Steve. And, you guys are both, you have integrity. You both try to put the truth out there. You both will say, I don't know if this part right here happened, but I'm going to say it because it seems to be, and you guys are trying so hard to put the truth, because again, that's another thing that really clouds up everything when people embellish and just make things up out of whole cloth. And I think that's one of the reasons we've been stumbling around for so many centuries trying to understand some of this stuff, because I think it's us mucking it up, not them. They're just doing what comes naturally, right, Steve? So is this your channel, sweetheart? Thank you guys so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm glad you came along too, sweetie. So much fun, right? Don't you love it? We can't get enough either. We can do it all the time.
We appreciate that so much.
If you don't mind, I've actually got a question for y'all too.
Sure.
Y'all being of Native American bloodline, y'all might have some interesting insight into this. Do y'all happen to know anywhere I can go near to me where I can go look for some of those rake creatures? Those things fascinate.
Oh. How about
They're
you, Steve?
creepy, but they're cool looking.
Those rakes. What do you? That's Steve's department. I yield to you.
I've heard of
Mr. Man.
some in Louisiana, which probably wouldn't be too far in northern Louisiana, but I don't know. I wouldn't go looking for one, but more power to you.
If it wasn't something supernatural, I'd be on that like a duck on a June bug.
Well, again, I think that that Gabrielle brought this part up too. A lot of it could be these experiments. I mean, think about the Montauk Project and things like that, where they were seeing all kinds of things coming up on the beach and, you know, in different places with weird creatures found. We don't know what's going on. I wonder what's going on. You know, I mean, again, something could have escaped. Something could have been let loose. Something, you know, I mean, all of these things, you know, it's fascinating to think this could go all the way back to Anubis and, you know, the hieroglyphics on, you know, pyramids and things, you know. We've only barely scratched the surface, you know, and there are things out there that we're not supposed to know. And I think sometimes when we get too close, we get pulled back a little bit. But it seems here lately that a lot of things are starting to really start to show up. But that could be anything or many things, you know, reasons for that. But I think we're also noticing more too, Steve. And I think talking about it and getting together like this with like-minded people and just trying to, you know, sort out the truth, it's getting us a little closer. At least it's giving us information of maybe what not to do, you know, and maybe staying a little bit safer. But if you want to go hunt for rakes, hey, chat, does anybody know where there's been any rake sightings or things that you know of? That give Elijah that here in the chat before we all say goodnight. And is this your channel, honey, for good for you? I know you said your YouTube channel, and are you still putting videos out there? I know you said you were just getting back into it. The Nighttime Nuggets of Cryptid Terror. That was so good, that last one you did.
Yes,
do another one.
We were actually live streaming. We started a new podcast recently called Strangely Enough.
Okay.
And, we were actually live streaming Saturday night.
Grab me that, mods.
Now I've got to get some more Nightmare Nuggets up. I've slacked in that department. I'm not going to lie to you, but
you do work construction almost 50 hours a week, so there's that.
Yeah, but luckily I've got opportunity now where I can type up my scripts at works.
We do
when
have
a
video
when I've got
coming
extra
out
time.
soon that we're working on.
Oh yeah, we do. Mine was buffering there for a second.
Wow, D-Rock. Look here. D-Rock has said, I have seen an official Bigfoot research truck at the Albany Museum in upstate New York twice in the past 2 months. A Jeep truck. If I see it again, I will sure take a picture. Well, I'll tell you what, something's going on in New York. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure if it's Bigfoot, zombies, or the I don't know what's going on. But upstate New York, I mean, look, there's no place really that you could point that doesn't have something going on. If there's woods, if it's the cities, it's the humans. If it's the and sometimes those two things blend together. Steve and I have had wonderful conversations about all these humanoids seen in Chicago and, you know, things like that. Very much like a Mothman type thing. And the Mothman story is, you know, amazing. All of these things, something's going on, and they seem to be drawn to either causing fear or drawn to fear, you know. And I'm not a big fan of things jumping on people in very thin tents and, you know, just that kind of thing. And Bigfoot, it just seems to not want you around in their area, where the Dogman seems to come into your area and just attack like crazy, you know, and it's a little bit more on the wild side. So that it's really scary. So thank you guys so much for coming on and telling you all this. Listen, American Werewolves, watch it. It's fantastic. It's on YouTube. I'll try to get a link in here for you. Steve, when is the one that you did available out? The Skinwalker, the American Werewolf.
I think it's
on
available.
DVD.
They mailed me a copy, but I think it's on, I want to say Amazon Prime. Prime Video, Amazon Video. If you have a Prime subscription, I think you can watch it, or you can rent it on there or buy it.
So check it out there and watch that and listen to what everybody is saying. Listen to these people that are retired police officers that could not tell the story before until after they retired because they'd lose their job. And I mean, they're the most profound. And there's one in there that the gentleman tells that actually has both Bigfoot and Dogman in it, and it definitely leads a lot of credence to Elijah's theme on that there may be something where Bigfoot are in the south part and the Dogmen are in the other part, and sometimes they tangle, or territory kind of thing. So there you go, guys. Thank you so much for coming on tonight and taking time out of your night to do this. We appreciate it, and I'm so glad I finally got to meet you, Elijah.
It's good
It
to
was
meet you
wonderful
both.
to meet
And
both
thank
of
y'all
you.
for having
Thank
us
you so
on.
much
Yeah,
for
nice to meet you.
on.
It's been a good
And
time.
I've
Yeah.
got a radio show on Clyde Lewis Ground Zero radio network called Everything Out There. Airs once a week on Sunday nights. I'd like to have you as a guest on there sometime, Elijah.
I'd love to be on, brother. Shoot me an email or message on Facebook. I'd love to be
You
on.
guys are set for life now. You get to talking about those good old Tennessee lore and all those stories up there in the mountains. You're never going to get off that. You got radio material forever now. So I'm glad y'all got to meet, and I'm so glad I got to meet you. And lovely Gabrielle, thank you so much for your input tonight. Thank you everybody in chat for being here. It's been wonderful. Steve, what you got going on this week, honey? You dropped some good videos this week,
Yeah,
sweetheart.
that's
You
the
guys
deal.
are just
So,
coming off the chain.
yeah, on of course over on Missing Person Mysteries, that's the big channel. Always something going on over there to deal with the missing. And we do have the subscriber stories, which delves into cryptids and the supernatural and stuff. And then on my Tales Untold channel, that's a little bit of everything. That's folklore, fiction. I've been doing a series on the pharaohs. I've got a new series over there called Dark Tales from Every State. And I think Arkansas is the next one that's coming out, and it talks about the legend of Boggy Creek and the Fog Monster and stuff. So watch out for that. Just getting started with that one, but that's going to do
So
all
good. It's so good,
states.
Steve. You're doing a great job, honey. They're throwing bacon at you guys. Here comes the bacon. Here comes the bacon. They love you. They love you. Want to have you back. So definitely get on Steve's radio show. I do it. I've done it several times. It's a good time, and it's great, and it really gets you all out there and all over.
Yeah.
But you're all over the place anyway on
Cisco's
YouTube.
going
Good to see
to
you.
join me. We're going to talk about childhood fears, real or imagined. That's the next episode that she's going to be on. So it's just
How much fun?
literally, it's everything out there. The paranormal, occult, witchcraft, a lot of Appalachian
They're
stuff.
subscribing to your channel, sweetie.
I was
Oh,
scared of
thank
a lot
you.
as a child.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And that's it. We were all talking about this morning, just movies we saw that put these things in our head to begin with, and going out with people and looking for this stuff. Ron Murphy says the same thing. His mom used to take him out looking for Bigfoot. It's like, where are we going, Mom? We're getting in the car. They said they saw a sighting over here. We're going to go see what's going on. And I think that comes early to just, that quest for the truth and the unknown, and wanting a little piece of it, and sometimes we get a little too close. We go, whoa, that was a bad idea. So be careful with those rakes. Listen, everybody, I'm gonna play you a little nice music to go out. Please enjoy the vibes. Please say all your good nights and everything. I'll post as usual all the comments up there, but we're going to do a little palate cleanse on the way out because we talked about some dark stuff tonight. And a pleasure to meet you guys. Get over there. They're subbing to your channel now, honey, so you're going to get over there to see some new faces. All right. Thank you again tonight. Good night, everybody. Be good humans out there, and come back for Lynn Monet's we're doing the entire American Revolution from 1760. We're crazy. Man, we had a blast last night just talking about Ben Franklin and everything and all the parallels that are happening now. So please come join us. The show is Liberty. It is the 1997 PBS special that did an absolutely bang up wonderful job. There's 6 episodes. It's for free, and you can see it there in the archives, and you can come join the discussion. Let's talk about it. See y'all next week. Be good humans. Good night, everybody. Thank you again, guys. Blessings to you. All right. Good night. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Good night, sweetheart.
Have a good
Bye.